A young woman awakens in a sterile hospital room, her mind a complete blank as she takes in her unfamiliar surroundings. She gingerly touches the heavy bandages wrapped around her head and torso, wondering how she sustained such severe injuries. Panic starts to set in as she realizes she cannot remember a single detail about her life or her identity. Suddenly, the door explodes inward under a hail of gunfire, forcing her to scramble for cover as sparks fly. Bullets tear through the room in a relentless barrage as the assailant continues his cold-blooded assault. A masked man steps through the threshold, scanning the room for his target with lethal precision. He moves cautiously toward the hospital bed, visibly confused to find it empty and his prey missing. The intruder glances around the shadows, sensing that he is no longer the only hunter in this room. Seizing the moment, the woman emerges from the darkness behind him, brandishing a sharp glass shard for a desperate counterattack. A mysterious voice echoes through the room, mockingly thanking her for taking care of the intruder. Before she can strike, the masked man spins around and presses the cold barrel of his pistol against her forehead. Facing certain death, her only request is for the gunman to reveal her identity before he pulls the trigger. The assassin remains silent, firing his weapon to finish the job without a hint of hesitation. Miraculously, the woman remains unharmed as the masked gunman collapses to the floor, neutralized by a precise shot from a new arrival. A tall, sharp-dressed man stands in the doorway, his weapon still aimed at the fallen threat. He lowers his gaze to the woman and delivers a shocking revelation. He is her husband. She looks him over, noting his perfectly tailored suit and the strictly professional aura he exudes. His eyes are sharp and calculating, revealing the intensity of a man who takes his duties very seriously. The woman is momentarily stunned, finding it hard to believe she is married to someone so remarkably handsome. Throwing caution to the wind, she leaps into his arms and embraces him with a look of pure, innocent relief. The man stands frozen, clearly caught off guard by such an enthusiastic and physical welcome. She looks up at him with wide, trusting eyes, claiming that a man with his striking appearance could never be a liar. However, beneath her bubbly exterior, she remains hyper-aware of the firearm he still carries. A memory of a much colder time flashes through the man's mind, showing a side of her he hasn't seen today. In the pouring rain, a more glamorous version of the woman stands before him, her expression filled with icy defiance. She warns him to stay out of her path, showing a ruthless edge that contradicts her current fragile state. With a final, sharp command, she declares that all their professional ties are officially severed. The man had watched her walk away that night, left alone in the storm with his own wounds and regrets. Returning to the present, he questions if she truly intends to honor the promises she once made to him. The woman simply closes her eyes, exhausted by the chaos and the weight of her forgotten past. Seymour fires a deafening shot to neutralize the immediate threat, while shielding the woman from the crossfire. He stares down the barrel of his weapon with icy resolve, mocking the assassin's failed attempt to catch him off guard. Clutching his bleeding shoulder, the hitman begrudgingly admits that Seymour Gillespie's reputation for lethality is well-earned. Seymour towers over the defeated foe, noting that the assassin only survived because the woman was too weakened by her injuries to land a killing blow. Resigned to his fate, the killer stares up with a grim acceptance of his impending end at the hands of a professional. Seymour's eyes turn predatory as he demands the name of the employer before the hitman's time runs out. A squad of tactical reinforcements suddenly bursts into the room, reporting for duty to their commander. He barks out sharp orders for his team to drag the killer away for a thorough interrogation to find the mastermind. Nearby, the woman remains in a deep, unresponsive state, her face a mask of pale exhaustion. A subordinate leans in to verify her vitals, confirming that the target is still breathing despite her precarious condition. The soldier's hand hovers near her, tempted to eliminate the threat she posed to their unit. Seymour interrupts with a sharp warning glance, reminding his men that she is far too valuable to lose right now. The subordinate protests, pointing out the heavy casualties their division suffered because of her actions the previous night. He looks down at her with pure resentment, mourning the comrades she ruthlessly neutralized during their last encounter. Seymour remains unmoved, his cold gaze emphasizing that her strategic utility outweighs any personal grudges his men may hold. Sensing the rising tension, the second-in-command suggests they take the discussion outside to maintain a professional environment. Within her own mind, the woman feels herself drifting through a silent, lightless void of forgotten memories. She sinks deeper into the mental abyss, unable to grasp the whispered conversations occurring in the waking world. A ghostly hand reaches through the darkness of her psyche, offering a fleeting sense of warmth amidst the cold isolation. Her eyes snap open as she suddenly jolts back to consciousness, gasping as she returns to reality. She breathes a sigh of relief, realizing she has successfully survived the most dangerous night of her life. A faint, calculating thought crosses her mind as she realizes her gamble on the man's protection has paid off. She turns her head to the side, surprised to find her savior watching her with an unreadable and intense expression. The man greets her with a composed good morning, his imposing presence filling the sunlit room as he sits up. Instantly adopting a cheerful and innocent facade, she chirps back a greeting to the man she is supposed to call her husband. He maintains a focused, professional demeanor while asking if any of her memories have returned since the attack. She shakes her head slowly, maintaining the narrative that her past remains a complete and total mystery. With a practiced look of vulnerability, she admits that even her own identity remains a blank slate she cannot decipher. He finally provides a lead, reaching out to inform her that her name is Ursula Lambert. He leans closer to provide a sense of security, reaffirming his role as Seymour Gillespie, the man she is legally bound to. A subtle, challenging look enters his eyes as he asks if she finds the prospect of being married to him disappointing. Seymour decides it's time to bring in medical professionals to conduct a formal examination of her neurological state. As she tries to sit up, a sharp jolt of physical trauma causes her to wince and clutch her side in distress. He moves with practiced efficiency to support her frame, worried that the intensity of the previous night's combat has reopened her wounds. He gestures to the intricate design on her skin, explaining the technical history behind the tattoo he personally applied to her back. Seymour searches her eyes for any flicker of recognition, his gaze sharp enough to pierce through her fragile facade. Ursula continues her bubbly act, remarking on his impressive physical fitness while he focuses on the technical task of applying her medicine. She continues with her morning routine, feeling the weight of his intense, intimidating gaze as if it were a physical heat. Realizing he might be testing the validity of her memory loss, she decides to lean further into the role of the helpless amnesiac. Seymour maintains a strictly professional focus as he carefully begins to examine the bandages on her head. He speaks with a calm authority, explaining that removing the old gauze is a necessary step for her medical recovery. Ursula remains silent, her mind racing to reconcile this man's clinical care with the lethal world he inhabits. At the dining table, Seymour exudes the effortless elegance of a man accustomed to absolute tactical control. Her eyes drop to the table, noticing the strange choice of providing her with nothing but plastic cutlery for her meal. She realizes these security measures are a direct response to the danger she supposedly poses to everyone in the room. The guards standing by maintain a stiff, unwelcoming posture, their eyes filled with visible distrust for their commander's wife. Ursula hardens her internal resolve, determined to push his boundaries and see how far this husband will actually go to maintain his story. The sudden shift in her energy catches the security detail off guard, making them brace for a potential outburst from the elite combatant. She creates a sudden scene by slamming her hands down, complaining that the flimsy plastic is useless for cutting her breakfast. Seymour doesn't even blink, meeting her manufactured frustration with a look of icy, unshakable patience. He slowly rises from his seat, his imposing height casting a long shadow across the sunlit breakfast table. The steady, rhythmic click of his boots against the floor echoes through the room as he closes the distance between them. He offers a smooth apology, claiming it was his own technical oversight for not preparing her food properly. Ursula maintains her cheerful mask, though she's now certain that his protective act is nothing more than a strategic lie to keep her contained. He leans down until they are inches apart, creating a moment of intense pressure as she tries to read his true, hidden intent. Behind her innocent smile, she vows to uncover exactly what this commander hopes to gain from keeping her alive. The windows suddenly shatter in a violent explosion, and Seymour instantly throws his body over hers to absorb the force of the blast. Amidst the smoke and falling debris, Ursula's hand instinctively finds a real metal blade, her lethal reflexes overriding her amnesiac act. Seymour commands her to stay low, his voice a low growl as he promises that no one will reach her while he stands guard. He pulls her into a protective embrace, shielding her from the hail of glass and gunfire erupting around the estate. She glances at the knife in her hand, realizing the chaos provides the perfect opportunity to strike him down and escape the facility. Another deafening blast rocks the structure, forcing Seymour to tighten his grip to keep her from being thrown by the shockwave. Her eyes widen in genuine shock as she sees fresh blood staining her hands after it seeps through his white shirt. Despite the jagged wound in his shoulder, Seymour looks down at her with a chillingly calm and focused expression. Ursula is left reeling, unable to understand why a supposed enemy would bleed so freely just to protect her life. Outside, the estate is engulfed in flames as a new, high-level threat emerges from the shadows of the tree line. A pink-haired assassin brandishes a heavy firearm, screaming for Ursula to face her in the middle of the carnage. The pink-haired assassin, Sabrina, screams into the chaos, demanding that Ursula reveal herself amidst the smoke and flames. Inside the estate, Seymour pulls Ursula close as a projectile slams into the doorframe right beside them. Ursula's sharp ears pick up a strange sound, and she quickly realizes that the attacker is firing rubber bullets instead of lethal rounds. She begins to suspect that this entire assault might be another elaborate test orchestrated by Seymour to expose her hidden skills. Tucking herself against the wall, she realizes that if she had instinctively fought back, she would have fallen right into his trap. Outside, the rhythmic glint of a polished blade signals that the attackers are preparing to make their next move. Sabrina huffs in frustration, telling her team to hold their ground just a little longer to finish the job. Another non-lethal round whizzes past her head, forcing her to finally order a tactical retreat before they are overwhelmed. Deep in the forest, Sabrina fumes at her failure, insisting that the entire operation was meant to rescue their boss. She points to a series of crude drawings on the wall, explaining how her distraction was supposed to give Ursula a window to escape. She barks at her subordinates, blaming their poor coordination for the mess they left behind at the estate. One of the men looks away nervously, wondering aloud if their leader could have actually perished in the explosion. A flicker of genuine fear crosses Sabrina's face as the weight of that possibility sinks in. The man points out that despite the noise, Ursula never once showed herself to join the fray. Sabrina snaps back with a snarl, refusing to believe that a woman of Ursula's caliber could be defeated so easily. A memory of a younger, terrified Sabrina flashes through her mind as she recalls a time when she was at her most vulnerable. In the flashback, a younger Ursula stands over her like a dark guardian, exuding an aura of absolute authority. Ursula had stared down Sabrina's tormentors with a cold, unwavering gaze that demanded total submission. The memory shifts to Ursula holding a weapon to a coward's head, teaching Sabrina that the weak must learn to become the hunters. She had offered the weapon to the girl, telling her that the only way to end a nightmare is to face it head-on. Back in the present, Sabrina's eyes burn with determination as she vows to return and save the woman who gave her a future. Returning to the quiet of the mansion, Ursula finds herself staring at Seymour, trying to decipher the man behind the mask. Seymour remains perfectly composed, his sharp gaze fixed on her as he allows his injuries to be tended to. Ursula notes the intense, calculating look in his eyes, sensing that he is still hunting for a crack in her amnesiac facade. She quickly pivots back to her bubbly act, playfully admiring his athletic build to keep him off balance. Secretly, she has to admit that his physical conditioning is top tier, even for a high-ranking commander. Seymour tells her to follow him, maintaining his professional tone as he prepares to change his clothes. He leads her into a sprawling, high-end cloakroom filled with rows of perfectly organized designer outfits. Ursula spots a simple student-style uniform hanging up, feeling a disconnect between the outfit and her own blurry memories. She pulls out a delicate, ruffled dress, wondering if this innocent style was something she actually used to wear. She moves on to examine a plain white t-shirt, searching for any familiar scent or feeling that might trigger a breakthrough. Seymour watches her closely, his presence looming over her as he waits for her to react to the wardrobe. He offers a small, knowing smile, claiming that they shared many fond memories involving that specific dress. Ursula is left reeling, struggling to imagine her former self leading such a different and seemingly peaceful life. A young, blushing boy complains about the troublesome nature of girls. He stands laden with shopping bags, wondering why a simple trip required so many purchases. Young Ursula retorts that her haul includes a specific gift intended for Mr. Campbell. She teases the boy, calling him a brown-noser for using the money he was given. She offers a playful apology for keeping him waiting during her long shopping spree. With a bright smile, she presents a plain white t-shirt she picked out just for him. She holds the garment up, emphasizing that it was a deliberate choice made with him in mind. The boy stares at the gift, stunned that she would think of him at all. He defensively yells that he isn't easily bought and refuses to be her friend. Ursula leans in close, declaring that taking the gift means he belongs to her. She boldly predicts that in the future, he is destined to become her husband. He rejects the idea immediately, shouting that she doesn't deserve someone like him. He stomps away with his bags, threatening to throw the unwanted garment into the trash. 10 years later, Seymour stares at that same shirt, admitting it holds significant technical value to him. Ursula questions if the value lies in how little fabric was used in the other outfits provided. Seymour covers his face in frustration, questioning the technical choices of his subordinate Joaquin. He clarifies that they are only at this villa for its strategic safety and security. Ursula laughs it off, suggesting the crew just wants to promote a healthy professional bond. His gaze shifts to her hand, asking if the injury from the combat has healed. He takes her hand firmly to conduct a visual inspection of the damaged skin. He notes the wound has scabbed over and requires a more technical approach than a bandage. He mentions that more medical supplies are available if her condition worsens. Ursula blushes, insisting she is fine and doesn't require further immediate attention. He suggests an alternative method to accelerate the biological healing process. He performs a traditional, formal gesture of care that leaves her momentarily breathless. A loud voice interrupts, announcing that the medical professional has arrived downstairs. Seymour enters the living room and immediately inquires about his wife's medical status. The doctor explains that nerve damage from the trauma is the primary cause of her amnesia. Ursula realizes she must identify Seymour's true role before her memory fully returns. Seymour thanks the physician and prepares to escort him safely from the premises. Ursula stands alone by the window, watching the two men depart from the room. She senses a shift in Seymour's mood, wondering why he appears so unsettled. Outside, the doctor hands Seymour a small, professional container of medication. Seymour carefully examines the unlabeled bottle, noting its lack of formal identification. Ursula approaches him as he returns, asking for the details of the doctor's report. He holds up the bottle, claiming the doctor provided it specifically for her recovery. He insists the pills will nourish her nerves and orders her to take one immediately. In a dimly lit office, a mysterious figure crushes walnuts in his palm, his voice dripping with venom as he berates his subordinate for failing to eliminate Ursula. The man in the suit trembles as a sudden, violent strike from his superior sends him reeling backward in terror. He collapses onto the floor, desperately begging for one more chance and revealing that a hidden spy is already embedded within Seymour's private villa. From the shadows, the mastermind grants a final cold command: finish the job quickly and ensure Seymour takes the fall for the chaos. He plans to let the rival Vermilion Bird sect take the heat for the assassination, while he reaps the tactical rewards from the sidelines. Meanwhile, the morning sun hits the pristine exterior of the villa where Ursula is currently being kept under high-security surveillance. Ursula gazes out the window, noting that she has survived a week in this gilded cage, while her physical injuries have finally begun to heal. Her eyes narrow with a cold, analytical precision as she assesses the true nature of her current confinement. She sits stoically on the couch, surrounded by 4 stone-faced guards whose presence creates a stifling atmosphere of constant observation. When she suddenly stands to excuse herself, the guards instantly draw their weapons in a panicked, over-the-top display of technical force. Tucking herself away, she realizes the tension in the room is reaching a breaking point. Suspecting these men harbor a lethal intent, her heart skips a beat when one of the guards breaks formation and approaches her with a small, sharpened blade in hand. Ursula's mask slips for a split second, her eyes widening at the unexpected sight of the unsheathed weapon. The guard gives her a chilling, toothy grin that suggests he is about to make a move she never saw coming. He lets out a manic laugh, brandishing the knife with a terrifying level of confidence and speed. To her utter shock, he begins a whirlwind display of apple-peeling acrobatics, shredding through fruit with elite-level precision rather than attacking her. Seeing an opportunity to maintain her act, Ursula laughs along and offers to show off her own delicate culinary skills. Using her hidden combat training, she transforms the fruit into a platter of intricate roses that leaves the guards stunned by her hand-eye coordination. The tactical team gathers around the snack, their initial hostility momentarily forgotten in the face of her impressive display. The lead guard offers her a cup of black tea, claiming the hibiscus infusion is exactly what she needs for her continued medical recovery. Ursula brings the porcelain cup to her lips, her senses heightened as she prepares to take a cautious sip. A sudden, sharp realization hits her as her pupils dilate. Something is fundamentally wrong with the chemical composition of the liquid. She smoothly lowers the cup, claiming the tea is far too hot to drink, while the guard watches her with a suspicious, intense gaze. She watches the men huddle together, wondering if the poison was a direct order or the work of a rogue agent within the household staff. Her eyes drift to the table, noting the discrepancy between the guard's real steel blade and the flimsy plastic knife she was permitted to use. The air turns frigid as Ursula's true nature surfaces, her mind locking onto the fact that an active killer is standing in the room with her. She decides to lean into the danger, resolving to play this lethal cat-and-mouse game until she can identify her true enemy. Far away at an urban headquarters, a new tactical operation is being plotted to disrupt Seymour's control. An operative suggests targeting Seymour's loyal subordinate, Joaquin, believing his honest nature makes him the perfect mark for a technical trap. Sabrina leans back with a confident smirk, looking ready to take on the role of the ultimate distraction for the sake of the mission. One of the men waves his hands in a panic, terrified that Joaquin's strict professional standards will ruin their chances of success. The meeting is interrupted by news that they have successfully captured the doctor, who recently treated Ursula at the villa. Sabrina's face pales as she hears the report of Ursula's memory loss and Seymour's bold claim that she is his legal wife. A dark vision of Seymour's perceived psychological dominance over her mentor flashes through Sabrina's mind, fueling her protective rage. Clutching her chest in a fit of pure determination, she vows to do whatever it takes to extract Ursula from her captor's grasp immediately. The glass of poison tea sits undisturbed on the table, shimmering with a deceptive, lethal glow. Ursula remains seated in the dim light, her mind racing as she stares at the beverage she knows is meant to be her end. She observes the guards hovering nearby, wondering why the assassin is hesitating to see if she actually takes a sip. One of the security team members leans in with a forced smile, asking if the tea is not to her liking. Ursula's gaze sharpens as she analyzes his every movement, suspecting him to be the one who delivered the toxic drink. To her alarm, the man picks up the glass himself, claiming that such a high-quality blend should never be wasted. He brings the rim of the glass to his lips, prepared to consume the very poison he likely prepared for her. Acting on pure instinct, Ursula strikes his hand away with a sudden shout, pretending to hunt a non-existent mosquito. The glass shatters against the floor, sending the dangerous liquid splashing harmlessly across the tiles. She maintains her composure while walking away, coldly informing the guard that the pest has been dealt with. Ursula ascends the grand staircase, her elegant gown trailing behind her as she retreats to the safety of her room. She realizes the infiltrator is far more disciplined than she anticipated, making him a significant threat to her survival. As she reaches the landing, she contemplates whether she must bait him into a more direct confrontation to expose his identity. Her tactical thoughts are cut short when the cold steel of a gun barrel is suddenly pressed against her temple. Across town, Seymour concludes a formal business meeting with an associate named Mr. Lane. Lane offers an invitation to a social club for the evening, hoping to extend their professional networking session. Seymour checks his watch and politely declines, citing a heavy workload that requires his immediate attention. The older man chuckles, teasing Seymour about having a significant other waiting for him back at the villa. The conversation is interrupted by a high-priority call that Seymour answers with his usual professional gravity. His face drains of color as he receives a report that suggests a catastrophic breach of security has occurred. Without a word of explanation, he stands up and informs Mr. Lane that an urgent emergency requires his presence. Seymour sprints out of the office, his focus entirely on the safety of the woman he left behind. Mr. Lane watches him go from the shadows, a sinister expression revealing his involvement in the unfolding chaos. He envisions Ursula as a broken bird in a cage, convinced that his plan to eliminate her has already succeeded. Seymour bursts back into the villa, his appearance frantic as he searches for any sign of a struggle. He throws open the bedroom door, shouting Ursula's name with a desperation he rarely allows himself to show. His eyes scan the room frantically, terrified of what he might find waiting for him in the silence. He finds Ursula perfectly unharmed and casually snacking on chips, her playful tone mocking his visible panic. A wave of immense relief washes over him, though he struggles to regain his usual stoic composure. She gestures for him to take a seat, promising to recount the strange events that transpired while he was away. Elsewhere, Jokin discusses the security breach with his team, warning them to remain vigilant for the internal mole. One of the subordinates questions the tactical logic of keeping such a dangerous woman under their protection. Jokin explains that her value lies in the stolen seal she possesses, which is vital to their organization's influence. They continue their patrol through the city, focused on maintaining the strict territorial boundaries of their group. Their professional walk is interrupted by the sound of a young woman being harassed by a group of local thugs. A predator looms over a pink-haired girl, ignoring her pleas to be left alone as he tries to force her to follow him. Jokin delivers a devastating kick to the assailant, firmly declaring that such behavior will not be tolerated on his watch. He turns his attention to the victim, his voice softening as he checks to see if she sustained any injuries. The girl looks up with tear-filled eyes, begging for his protection as she asks him to safely escort her home. The black muzzle of a handgun looms just inches from Ursula's face, yet she remains remarkably composed. In the dimly lit hallway, the masked intruder keeps his weapon leveled at her, hesitating as if intimidated by her calm demeanor. Ursula narrows her focus, calculating the trajectory of the projectile in the fraction of a second before the trigger is pulled. With light-level reflexes, she tilts her head just enough for the bullet to whistle harmlessly past her ear. Instead of fear, a surge of tactical adrenaline ignites within her, causing a predatory smile to spread across her face. She lunges forward with a powerful strike, sending the revolver spinning out of the assassin's grip. The intruder realizes he is outmatched and turns to flee down the stairs with Ursula hot on his heels. A tactical smoke bomb suddenly detonates on the floor, obscuring her vision and allowing the target to vanish. Ursula stands amidst the dissipating haze, frustrated that the internal security breach resulted in the spy's escape. Back in the bedroom, Seymour maintains a stoic and detached expression as he listens to the report of the encounter. Ursula sits on the edge of the bed, questioning why he is observing her with such a judgmental gaze. He leans in close, mocking her inability to secure the intruder or identify his facial features during the struggle. She looks away, her pride stung by his cold assessment of her tactical performance. Seymour offers a hollow expression of pity, further highlighting the failure of the villa's security protocols. Ursula remains silent, her mind racing to analyze the underlying motives behind his verbal jabs. He acknowledges that the presence of filthy rats within his household is an issue that requires his personal attention. He orders her to focus on her medical recovery, while he departs to manage the remaining security threats. Seymour turns toward the door, his silhouette radiating a sharp, unyielding professional authority. Ursula stands to challenge his departure, demanding to know why he offers no reassurance after she faced a lethal threat. He pauses in his tracks, looking back at her with an intense, unreadable focus in his eyes. He shifts his weight and looms over her, creating a heavy atmosphere of psychological pressure in the room. His hand moves toward her face, demonstrating a technical dominance that forces her to remain stationary. He places a finger against her lips, suggesting that her request for comfort is merely a cover for her internal restlessness. His eyes burn with a cold fire as he questions whether she is simply looking for a way to satisfy her own hidden drives. Ursula recoils slightly, her expression turning defensive as she denies his sharp psychological accusations. Deep in the night, the cold gleam of a combat knife appears above Ursula as she lies seemingly asleep. A gloved hand tightly grips the hilt of the blade, preparing for a decisive, technical strike. The figure hovers over her, whispering a chilling question about whether her amnesia is a genuine condition or a calculated ruse. Seymour's eyes narrow in the shadows, revealing a dark intensity as he contemplates the true nature of the woman before him. He brings the sharpened steel down with sudden, terrifying speed toward the bed. The blade misses her throat by a fraction of an inch, burying itself deep into the pillow to test her reaction. He stands over her for a final moment, satisfied that she did not flinch or wake up during the demonstration. He exits the room with a final, mocking wish for his wife to have a peaceful night's rest. As soon as the door latches shut, Ursula's hand trembles violently as she clutches the bed sheets in the darkness. She gasps for air, her body reacting to the immense pressure of surviving another lethal encounter. Staring into the void, she realizes that Seymour harbors a terrifying level of hatred that she must navigate to survive. High above the city lights, the tall apartment complex stands as a silent witness to the night's unfolding drama. Inside, Jo-Kwin sits on the edge of his seat, his nerves clearly frayed by the intensity of the evening. He swallows hard, his professional exterior momentarily cracking under the pressure of his current situation. Sabrina approaches with a steady hand, offering a refreshing drink to her guest in a display of practiced hospitality. Jo-Kwin looks up with genuine concern, asking if she has truly recovered from the traumatic encounter with the local thugs. She lowers her gaze, her face flushing as she begins to play the role of a vulnerable victim to perfection. With a trembling voice, she admits that while her physical wounds are minor, the mental toll of the attack remains heavy. Seeing her distress, Jo-Kwin immediately rises to offer his support, his protective instincts overriding his usual caution. He provides a steadying presence, assuring her that she is finally safe within the walls of her home. Maintaining a respectful distance, he formally introduces himself as Jo-Kwin Hatcher to establish a sense of security. Behind her mask of innocence, Sabrina's eyes sharpen as she realizes her target is far more gullible than she anticipated. The condensation glitters on the glass as it sits on the tray, a silent prop in their elaborate game of deception. They settle onto the couch together, the atmosphere thick with the fabricated history Sabrina is weaving. She gestures frantically, recounting a terrifying moment where she felt completely helpless against her pursuers. A righteous fury ignites within Jo-Kwin as he condemns the actions of those who would prey on the weak. Sabrina gently interjects, claiming the authorities arrived just in time to prevent a true tragedy from occurring. Jo-Kwin's expression softens as he promises that he will ensure she never has to face such a threat alone again. She hides her face behind her hand, her feigned embarrassment drawing him further into her tactical web. As she reaches for the tea service, her movements are calculated to keep his focus entirely on her. She flashes a brilliant, appreciative smile, hailing him as the hero who changed her fate that night. In a sudden, fluid motion, she stumbles forward, forcing Jo-Kwin to catch her in a strictly professional rescue maneuver. She winces in pain, claiming that she has severely twisted her ankle during the accidental fall. Jo-Kwin assesses the situation with clinical precision, realizing she is currently unable to walk on her own. He pauses for a heartbeat, weighing his duty against the immediate physical needs of the injured woman. Without hesitation, he lifts her into his arms to provide a safe transport to her nearby bedroom. A triumphant smirk crosses Sabrina's face as she realizes her bait has been taken exactly as planned. He carefully places her onto the bed, ensuring she is comfortable before stepping back to maintain boundaries. Jo-Kwin stands at attention, his posture radiating the disciplined authority of a seasoned operative. To her utter confusion, he simply leaves his contact card on the table and makes a prompt, professional exit. Sabrina stares at the closed door in disbelief, her ego bruised by his sudden and unexpected departure. The following morning, the sun illuminates the grand estate, where the next phase of the operation is set to begin. Jo-Kwin meets with the staff in the main hall, his presence signaling a shift toward high-alert security protocols. He takes a seat across from Ursula, his face grim as he reveals that a lethal threat is currently targeting her. He declares his intent to expose the traitor within the villa, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of guilt. The security guards line up for a rigorous inspection, their expressions unreadable under Jo-Kwin's intense scrutiny. After a grueling half-hour of technical questioning, Jo-Kwin dismisses the team to speak with Ursula in private. He explains that Seymour's protective nature stems from a deep-seated concern for her ultimate well-being. Ursula tilts her head curiously, asking if Jo-Kwin's own personal experiences have ever led him to fall in love. The question catches him off guard, causing a rare blush to creep up the neck of the stoic subordinate. He remains silent for a moment, his mind likely drifting back to the strange encounter from the previous night. Shifting the focus, Ursula asks for the objective truth regarding her past relationship with Seymour. Jo-Kwin hesitates, his eyes darting away as if the memories are too heavy to share with an amnesiac. Ursula leans forward, demanding to know what specific event caused the current rift between them. He finally breaks his silence, admitting that they were once the perfect perfect couple before a dark turning point. She watches him intently, her heart racing as she prepares for a revelation that could change everything. Jo-Kwon drops the devastating truth. The foundation of their love was shattered when Ursula chose to betray him. The weight of Jo-Kwon's revelation hits Ursula like a physical blow, leaving her reeling from the news of her own past betrayal. She remembers the chilling intensity in Seymour's eyes, a silent promise that he never leaves a traitor alive. Desperate for clarity, she turns to Jo-Kwon and asks how she could have possibly strayed from a husband with such an imposing presence. She touches her lips in a daze, unable to fathom why her past self would risk everything to find someone else. A mental image of Seymour's peak physical condition flashes through her mind, emphasizing his status as a top-tier tactical commander. She decides to set aside the mystery of her alleged infidelity for a moment to focus on the immediate security breach. Jo-Kwon maintains a professional posture as he explains he was busy securing the warehouse during the assassination attempt. One of the guards chimes in with a crude excuse, claiming a sudden digestive emergency kept him from his post. Ursula's expression sours as she absorbs the unnecessary and unprofessional details of the man's story. Jo-Kwon points out that the villa's external cameras were strategically disabled, making it impossible to verify any of their movements. He advises Ursula to retreat to her quarters for much-needed rest, while he continues the internal investigation. She tries to call out for more answers about her past, her hand reaching out as if to catch the fading truth. Jo-Kwon ignores the plea and breaks into a fast run, eager to return to his tactical duties. Ursula is left in the oppressive silence of the room, her silhouette framed by the harsh light of the windows. She contemplates Seymour's physical prowess once more, wondering if his skills as a leader were enough to keep her loyal. She analyzes the situation from every technical angle, searching for a logical reason why she would have sought an affair. Her mind wanders into absurd territory, questioning if Seymour lacked the necessary stamina to maintain their partnership. Shaking off the intrusive thoughts, she resolves to use every tool at her disposal to appease him and ensure her survival. Later that afternoon, the villa kitchen is engulfed in a thick cloud of smoke as Ursula attempts a culinary peace offering. Seymour returns home and pauses at the doorway, his face a mask of confusion as he takes in the chaotic scene. Ursula turns with a bright, forced smile, greeting her husband with the enthusiasm of a dedicated homemaker. She proudly presents a plate of braised pork ribs, her elegant attire contrasting with the disarray of the cooking station. Seymour's eyes widen in genuine alarm as he asks if the kitchen was the site of another violent struggle. He gestures toward the meat with a grim suspicion, questioning if she has prepared the remains of a fallen intruder. He stares down at the steaming dish, initially refusing to partake in such a suspiciously special meal. Ursula insists that the ingredients were personally sourced by Jo-Kwon, and that she spent hours perfecting the recipe. Her face flushes with a mix of pride and vulnerability as she asks him not to judge her first attempt at cooking. Seymour relaxes his guard slightly, realizing the meal is free of any toxic additives or hidden traps. He takes a slow, deliberate bite, his analytical mind shifting to evaluate the flavor profile of the dish. Ursula watches him with wide, expectant eyes, her heart racing as she waits for his professional verdict. A rare look of satisfaction crosses Seymour's face as he admits that the meal is surprisingly excellent. Ursula beams with a sense of tactical victory, thrilled that her efforts to bridge the gap between them are working. Seymour offers a faint, uncharacteristic smile, noting that the unique qualities of the dish are a direct reflection of the cook herself. He pulls her into a firm embrace, claiming that once he has experienced her hospitality, he can never truly let it go. He leans in close to her ear, requesting that she prepare this specific meal for him again in the very near future. After the brief moment of connection, he informs her that he must depart immediately to handle urgent organizational business. Ursula stands alone in the fading light of the kitchen, questioning whether his praise was for the food or for her presence. She picks up a piece of the meat, wondering if Seymour's mercy is a sign of lingering affection or a calculated torture. Seymour strides through the grand hallways of his estate, his silhouette radiating a cold and focused authority. He pauses before a massive oil painting, his hand resting on the frame as he contemplates his next move. His polished boots click rhythmically against the stone stairs as he descends into the hidden depths of the villa. In the dimly lit interrogation room, he looks down at the captured assassin who refused to yield under Jo-Kwon's questioning. Seymour touches his chin with a chilling calm, his eyes boring into the professional killer's soul. He warns the prisoner that their silence is futile, as their mysterious employer has already marked them for elimination. Seymour grants the prisoner a single day to reconsider his silence before signaling Jo-Kwon to depart. The heavy cell door groans as it closes, sealing the interrogation chamber in shadow. The rhythmic sound of polished shoes echoes against the stone steps as the two men ascend to the upper levels of the villa. Deep in the shadows of a hidden corridor, a hooded intruder brandishes a tactical knife with a sinister, confident grin. The assassin's blood runs cold as he peels back a hood to find a lifeless dummy instead of his intended target. From a concealed monitoring station, a gloved hand activates the facility's security override with a sharp click. Seymour emerges from the gloom, revealing that the true killer was relocated to a high-security site long before the intruder arrived. A predatory golden glint flashes in Seymour's eyes as he demands the name of the mastermind behind this pathetic infiltration. Jo-kwon outlines the technical rivalry between the Vermilion Bird and Cullen Chambers of Commerce to help identify the true culprit. Seymour's gaze sharpens as he contemplates whether the leader of the Grand Chamber of Commerce is orchestrating the chaos. He brings a finger to his lips, signaling that the time for loud threats has passed in favor of quiet, calculated execution. Jo-kwon stands at attention, questioning if the compromised asset should be permitted to leave the premises alive. Seymour turns his back, coldly stating that his organization has zero tolerance for those who violate their professional oaths. A sharp electronic chime breaks the silence as Jo-kwon checks a notification on his mobile device. He stares at the screen where Sabrina has sent a casual request to meet, ignoring the obvious tactical distraction. Back in the master suite, Ursula paces nervously while contemplating how to repair her fractured standing with her husband. She studies her reflection in the mirror, feeling the invisible weight of a past betrayal she cannot even remember. A terrifying mental image surges forth, showing a blood-spattered Seymour looming over her with lethal intent. Ursula's pupils dilate in pure shock as the phantom of her husband's voice echoes through her mind. In the vision, Seymour clutches his chest as he vows to witness her total psychological collapse. She clutches her head in a desperate attempt to silence the internal screams of her own subconscious fears. Snapping back to the present, she touches her cheek and looks toward the door at the sound of a loud commotion. In the hallway, a security guard struggles to restrain a blonde woman who is determined to force her way inside the suite. The intruder delivers a sharp slap to the guard's face, asserting her dominance over the villa's internal staff. She adjusts her earring with a look of pure defiance, refusing to be intimidated by the security detail. With a sharp turn of her head, the young woman prepares to confront whoever is currently occupying the room. Ursula steps into the foyer holding a bag of snacks, completely baffled by the hostile stranger standing in her home. She analyzes the girl's aggressive posture, wondering what business she could possibly have with the master of the house. Choosing a tactical approach of nonchalance, Ursula continues to snack while evaluating the guest's threat level. She offers a polite smile and a handful of chips, calmly informing the visitor that Seymour is currently unavailable. The girl's face contorts with rage as she takes deep offense at Ursula's formal and polite greeting. She erupts into a furious tantrum, shouting her exact age to prove that she is far younger and more vibrant than Ursula. Ursula blinks in confusion, unable to understand why a simple honorific caused such a volatile emotional reaction. The intruder, Kelly Hugh, sneers as she accuses Ursula of using a fake vulnerability to manipulate Seymour's professional pity. Ursula maintains a steady, professional gaze, refusing to let the girl's personal insults break her composure. Kelly steps into Ursula's personal space, whispering a venomous claim that she is actually Seymour's true girlfriend. The atmosphere in the room turns ice cold as Kelly levels a final, hateful glare at the woman she considers a hypocritical interloper. In a grand, sun-drenched hall, Seymour sits across from the influential Alan Hugh to discuss high-level organizational matters. Seymour maintains a stoic expression, offering a formal apology for his recent absence from the Grand Chamber of Commerce's social circles. Alan Hugh, the seasoned leader of the local commerce guild, acknowledges the commander's busy schedule while calmly sipping his tea. A cold, calculating light flickers in Seymour's eyes as he prepares to pivot the conversation toward his current domestic situation. Seymour bluntly reveals that Ursula is currently staying at his villa, prompting a curious inquiry from the veteran businessman. Ursula's internal resolve hardens in a mental flash as she prepares to navigate the psychological manipulation of those around her. Seymour explains his technical reasoning for keeping her close, claiming his actions are driven purely by a professional desire for retribution. He reveals the ultimate objective of his current operation: recovering the legendary square seal that Ursula allegedly possesses. Back at the villa, Ursula realizes that her guest's volatile emotions can be exploited to gain critical intelligence. She confronts Kelly Hugh directly, determined to break through the girl's arrogant facade with a series of sharp, tactical questions. Ursula leans in close, asking a blunt and personal question to test Kelly's actual level of intimacy with Seymour. Kelly's face flushes with immediate embarrassment as she struggles to formulate a coherent response to the unexpected inquiry. With a mocking smile, Ursula highlights the obvious lack of a deep personal connection between the self-proclaimed girlfriend and her host. Kelly erupts in a defensive fury, warning Ursula to cease her line of questioning and maintain a respectful distance. Ursula whispers a chilling observation, noting that Kelly is completely oblivious to the true security protocols governing the villa. Desperate to reclaim her status, Kelly shouts that Ursula is nothing more than a deadly enemy who stole a vital asset from the organization. The revelation triggers a sharp mental flash for Ursula, forcing her to recall a violent struggle where she allegedly wounded Seymour. She envisions a darker version of herself, a hyena known for relentless aggression and a complete lack of tactical restraint. Kelly asserts that Seymour is only keeping Ursula alive to extract the exact location of the missing seal. Ursula offers a cold, appreciative smirk, satisfied that she has successfully extracted the intel she needed from the girl. At the meeting, Seymour abruptly concludes the session, signaling that his professional patience for small talk has reached its limit. Alan Hugh watches him with a mix of respect and caution, recognizing the dangerous potential of the young commander. He notes the striking similarity between Seymour and his late uncle, both characterized by a ruthless and decisive nature. As Seymour departs, Alan confirms his commitment to their pact, anticipating the moment the seal is finally secured. Realizing her life is in imminent danger, Ursula begins packing her essentials in a desperate bid for freedom. Seymour suddenly appears at the threshold of the bedroom, his presence instantly halting her escape attempt. He demands a technical explanation for her actions, his voice laced with a quiet but firm authority. Ursula remains composed, claiming she is merely following the instructions of the woman who identified herself as his romantic partner. Seymour's confusion is evident as he asks for the specific identity of the person who made such a claim. He clarifies that Kelly Hugh is simply a business associate's daughter, dismissing the allegations as pure fabrication. Ursula turns away, stating that regardless of his status, she no longer wishes to be a pawn in his organizational games. Seymour issues a final directive, making it clear that she is physically prohibited from leaving the premises. She scoffs at his claim of protection, accusing him of maintaining her captivity for his own ulterior motives. Ursula closes the distance between them, demanding that he be completely transparent about his true intentions for her. She reaches out to touch the scar over his heart, seeking physical confirmation of the injury she reportedly caused. Seymour's expression darkens as he asks who provided her with the confidential details of his past trauma. Ursula maintains a professional focus on the wound, challenging him to admit that his actions are driven by a deep-seated grudge. She uses her physical presence to pin him down, forcing a direct confrontation regarding the true nature of their fractured relationship. Seymour looks down with a pained expression, insisting that his restrictive actions are driven solely by a professional desire to protect her. He reaches out to grasp her hand firmly against the sheets, a silent plea for her to trust his intentions despite the circumstances. Ursula counters his claims by highlighting the grim reality of her confinement, from the forced consumption of unknown medication to the armed guards watching her every move. Her voice trembles with a mix of fear and determination as she demands her absolute freedom from the villa. Seymour stares back with a haunting sadness, warning her that the world outside is far more dangerous than she realizes. Ursula reflects on the unknown pills and the time bomb of her past, fearing that her value to him is purely technical and temporary. She resolves that staying in this gilded cage will never help her recover the lost fragments of her identity or her true purpose. Seymour's eyes widen in sheer horror as he realizes the drastic measure she is about to take to secure her release. In a desperate bid for leverage, Ursula raises a handgun to her own temple, threatening to end her life if he refuses to let her go. Her finger hovers over the trigger of the loaded weapon, proving she is willing to risk everything for a chance at the truth. Panic finally breaks through Seymour's stoic facade as he begs her not to be impulsive and to put the firearm down. He eventually yields to her demands, his face a mask of defeat as he agrees to let her depart the premises. A cold, calculated smile touches Ursula's lips as she prepares to issue one final condition for her cooperation. She watches him intently, surprised by the sudden shift in his authoritative and domineering demeanor. Seymour requests that she promise to maintain her personal safety at all costs once she steps beyond the protection of his reach. He leans in close, his voice a low murmur as he vows to wait for her eventual return to their shared home. Ursula walks away from the estate without looking back, mentally apologizing for the promise she has no intention of keeping. A white sedan tears down the highway as she follows a lead from a recurring dream toward a house in the South District. She grips the steering wheel tight, grateful for the vehicle's specialized security features and peep-proof windows. Ursula checks the tactical gear she managed to secure, including the weapon she confiscated from Seymour's personal collection. Her mind drifts back to the uncharacteristic softness in Seymour's eyes during their final moments together. She questions the sincerity of his concern, wondering if his emotions were a genuine reflection of their past or another layer of manipulation. The peace is shattered by the deafening blast of a truck's horn as a massive vehicle veers directly into her path. Metal screeches and glass shatters as the heavy truck broadsides the car, sending it spinning violently across the asphalt. A team of armed mercenaries in tactical gear emerges from the back of the truck to quickly surround the wreckage. Ursula slumps unconscious against the steering wheel, blood pooling from a jagged wound on her forehead from the impact as she drifts in and out of awareness. She realizes that a hidden traitor within the villa must have leaked her exact coordinates. One of the suited men leans into the cabin, confirming to his team that their high-value target has been successfully neutralized. She glares through a haze of pain at the shadowy figures, her tactical mind racing to identify the source of this coordinated betrayal. Her pupils dilate in shock as a sudden, precise shot rings out, dropping one of the mercenaries where he stands. A mysterious figure clad in a white lab coat and a tie sprints toward the burning wreckage with athletic precision. The newcomer delivers a powerful, calculated kick to the jammed car door to reach the trapped woman inside. He leans into the smoke-filled interior, his expression a mix of urgency and cold, technical professionalism. Ursula looks up through the haze of the deployed airbag as the stranger offers a chillingly calm greeting that suggests they have met before. Seymour stands motionless with his back to his subordinates, his silhouette radiating an icy authority that keeps everyone at a distance. He explains with chilling clarity that Ursula must remain alive because she is the only lead to the missing artifact. The legendary square seal, a golden dragon of immense power, remains the ultimate prize that could destabilize the entire Grand Chamber of Commerce. Seymour offers a dark, confident smirk, claiming that even if his enemies capture her, he has the tactical means to reclaim his asset. His gaze narrows as he contemplates a hidden variable that could still disrupt his carefully laid plan. High above the city, the sun beats down on a secluded estate where the next phase of the operation is about to unfold. Inside a secure vehicle, Ursula recovers her senses, her face marked by the violence of the recent ambush. Her rescuer casually strikes a match, the small flame illuminating his features as he prepares to enjoy a cigarette. He exhales a cloud of smoke, greeting Ursula with a familiarity that sets her tactical instincts on high alert. The man lets out a mocking laugh, deriding her current battered state and comparing her to a stray animal. He informs her with casual brutality that he personally ensured every mercenary at the crash site received a fatal shot to the head. Ursula maintains a wary silence, internally questioning why she's associated with such a volatile and cruel individual. She forces a professional smile, deciding to play along with his performance until she can find a window to escape. The stranger's crimson eyes burn with an intense curiosity as he leans in to study her every reaction. He asks a pointed question, suspecting that the trauma of the accident has wiped her memories of their shared history. A predatory grin spreads across his face as he invades her personal space, his sharp features glinting in the dim light. He warns her that if she has truly forgotten him, she will lose her technical value and become entirely useless to his cause. A spark of the old hyena flashes in Ursula's eyes as she claims that she hasn't forgotten a single detail. In one fluid motion, her hand closes around a jagged shard of glass, turning a piece of debris into a lethal weapon. She pins the man against the seat, the sharp edge pressed against his throat as she demands he speak with more respect. Seizing the moment of confusion, Ursula kicks the door open and rolls out of the moving vehicle. She sprints toward the cover of the nearby forest, her breath hitching as she pushes her injured body to the limit. She glances back over her shoulder, shocked by the lack of immediate pursuit from her mysterious savior. The man stands by the car with a gun in one hand and a knife in the other, looking genuinely thrilled by her display of aggression. Ursula stumbles and falls to the ground, her strength finally failing as the adrenaline from the crash begins to fade. Blood drips from a fresh wound on the man's shoulder as he invites his old friend to recuperate at his private facility. Elsewhere, Monica stands on a scenic overlook with a close companion, trying to find peace amidst the memories of her childhood. Her expression turns grim as she recalls the painful legacy of her father and the debt that nearly destroyed her family. A dark memory surfaces of a group of thugs cornering a desperate man, demanding immediate payment for his gambling losses. The debt collectors show no mercy, physically intimidating their target in a damp, shadowy alleyway. The lead enforcer glares with a cold, professional detachment, unmoved by the pleas of the man before him. A young Monica watches through a crack in a nearby door, her eyes wide with terror as she witnesses her father's humiliation. Back in the present, tears stream down her face as the weight of the past becomes too heavy to bear. Her companion offers a firm, supportive embrace, providing a moment of stability in her fractured world. He leans in close, whispering words of encouragement to help her move past the trauma of her childhood. They share a moment of deep emotional connection, focused entirely on the mutual support required to face the coming storm. From the shadows of a nearby balcony, a mysterious observer watches the pair, his silhouette suggesting a new threat is closing in. Ursula lies defeated on the cold pavement, the shadow of her rescuer looming over her prone form. She gasps for air as she realizes the mercenaries only used non-lethal rubber bullets to incapacitate her during the ambush. The pale-haired man chuckles at her ferocity, wondering why she can't show a bit more gratitude for his timely intervention. He ignores the blood dripping from his hand as he tosses aside the shard of glass she used to wound him earlier. Ursula stares back with a mixture of loathing and wariness, labeling him a creepy monster who seemingly refuses to die. She narrows her eyes in a moment of cold calculation, realizing this dangerous man is her only remaining link to her forgotten identity. The white sedan speeds away from the scene of the crash, disappearing into the gray afternoon as they make their escape. Inside the vehicle, the stranger complains about having to play chauffeur while nursing the fresh injury she gave him. Ursula maintains a stoic front, determined to act like her old self to avoid revealing her current vulnerability to this man. She watches the landscape blur past the window, her mind racing to stay one step ahead of her unpredictable companion. In the distance, she spots Seymour's subordinate, Jo Quinn, sharing a private moment with an unknown woman on a scenic overlook. The doctor notes the couple's presence with a twisted sense of amusement, suggesting the quiet location is perfect for any kind of activity. He lets out a chilling laugh, remarking that the setting is ideal for a killer to dispose of a victim without leaving a trace. They drive past the overlook without stopping, leaving the unsuspecting Joaquin behind in the dust as they head toward the South District. Ursula realizes that seeing Seymour's right-hand man so close means she is still within the commander's reach. The car pulls up to a sprawling, dark estate that looks more like a fortress than a standard medical facility. Within the sterile walls of a private clinic, Ursula professionally tends to the deep gash on the man's shoulder. She observes the high-tech pharmaceutical equipment, confirming that this eccentric individual is indeed a highly skilled doctor. Her composure falters when he casually invites her to use the private shower in his personal quarters to clean up. He watches her reaction with an unnerving intensity, his eyes searching for any sign of her lost memories or past habits. Ursula's face flushes as she sharply questions whether he intends to violate her privacy during the session. The doctor reacts with genuine shock and offense, seemingly appalled by the suggestion of such unprofessional conduct. Ursula breathes a small sigh of relief, deducing that their past relationship was likely based on common professional interests. He leans back against the medical table, noting the extreme isolation of the mansion from the prying eyes of the city. With a manic energy, he explains that the high-pressure water system is perfectly designed to scrub away any biological evidence of a crime. Howard gazes out at the moonlight, his silhouette framed by the mocking label Hannibal scrawled across the glass. Ursula searches the scattered fragments of her mind, desperately trying to see if the surname Right triggers any tactical recognition. She paces the dimly lit room, realizing the Hannibal Right label was nothing more than a lethal game of wordplay they once shared. The doctor remains in the shadows, his expression unreadable, as he waits for her to solve the final piece of his identity puzzle. Ursula offers a sharp, knowing smirk as she bids a formal goodnight to the man she now correctly identifies as Howard. Howard lets out a soft, intrigued chuckle, clearly impressed that she managed to bypass his mental traps so quickly. She reflects on the Hannibal nickname, a dark joke referencing a famous cinematic killer that perfectly suits his eccentric nature. As night falls over the secluded South District fortress, the exterior remains silent and deceptively peaceful. Tossing and turning in the unfamiliar bed, Ursula finds herself unexpectedly yearning for the professional security of Seymour's villa. She recalls the rare moments of quiet stability where Seymour's presence acted as a stabilizing force before she drifted off to sleep. A sudden, metallic clank, echoing from the depths of the mansion, jolts her back to a state of high alert. She cautiously steps out into the corridor, her technical instincts screaming that the sound originated from the forbidden basement level. Moving with the silent precision of a trained operative, she descends the stairs to investigate the source of the nocturnal disturbance. She peers through the narrow gap of a heavy door, her eyes widening at the grim scene unfolding within the hidden lab. Howard stands over a surgical table, his gloved hand resting casually on the chest of a terrifyingly preserved, mummified corpse. The sight of the dry remains triggers a violent mental surge, forcing Ursula to confront a suppressed trauma from her youth. She envisions the dark day her father abandoned the family, leaving her mother broken and physically deteriorating. A young Ursula desperately tries to force-feed medication to her unresponsive mother, hoping against all technical reality for a recovery. She recalls clinging to her mother's freezing body for days, mistaking the coldness of death for a temporary fever. The memory shifts to the moment strangers burst into the room, forcefully prying her away from her mother's final embrace. She catches a horrifying glimpse of her mother's gaunt, lifeless face, a haunting image that mirrors the corpse in Howard's lab. The young girl screams and fights against the authorities, refusing to accept that her home has become a tomb. Eventually, she finds herself huddled in the corner of a bleak orphanage, stripped of her identity and her past. Her isolation is broken by a tall, sophisticated gentleman who offers her a chance at a new life under his professional care. The benefactor introduces his young nephew, a boy with a stern gaze who would eventually grow up to be the commander known as Seymour. A young Seymour, his face streaked with blood and tears, begs Ursula to leave him behind so she can escape a looming threat. Ursula refuses to abandon her companion, throwing her arms around him in a desperate vow to stay together even in the face of death. A vision of a wounded woman appears, her final wish being a future where they can escape their circumstances and find happiness together. The memory shifts to a peaceful day under the cherry blossoms, where the two children shared a rare moment of tranquility. Young Seymour clutches a golden time capsule, his expression soft as he explains it's a gift meant for their future selves. He looks at her with a heavy gaze, suggesting they wait 10 or even 15 years before retrieving the hidden treasure. Ursula watches with curiosity as they prepare to bury the capsules deep within the earth of the island. The two golden cylinders are lowered into the ground, sealing their childhood secrets away for a decade and a half. Seymour maintains a playful secrecy, refusing to divulge the specific contents of the message he's left for her. They lock pinky fingers in in a solemn oath, cementing a bond that Ursula believes will last for the rest of their lives. A close-up of their faces captures the pure, unwavering trust they once shared before the world tore them apart. The dream takes a dark turn as Ursula's subconscious manifests a cold, murderous intent toward anyone who dares to block her path. Her eyes glow with a supernatural intensity as she declares that even Seymour Gillespie will not be spared if he interferes with her mission. In a final, haunting image from her nightmare, Ursula stands as a vengeful shadow, ready to strike down her former protector. Ursula bolts upright in bed with a gasp, the name of her commander still lingering on her lips after the terrifying vision. Howard sits casually at the foot of the bed, mocking her for calling out for another man while under his professional care. He flashes a devious grin, explaining that she fainted at the sight of his collection, and he had to carry her back to her quarters. Ursula ignores his taunts, focusing her tactical mind on the pink cherry blossoms she saw in her recurring memories. Howard rests his head on his hand with a bored expression, offering to provide transportation to the docks so she can investigate her lead. She prepares to depart immediately, dismissing Howard's playful request for her to stay and keep him company at the estate. Ursula arrives at the bustling harbor, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the island from her dreams. She approaches a weathered sailor, showing him a professional level of persistence as she inquires about a land filled with sakura trees. The sailor identifies the mysterious location as Wave Island, a remote spot that fits the description perfectly. Dressed in sleek tactical attire and dark shades, Ursula stands ready to brave the open sea to reclaim her lost past. She watches a high-end yacht pull into the dock, knowing this is her only chance to reach the island before her pursuers catch up. Ursula secures her passage by offering the captain triple the standard rate, ensuring she won't be turned away from the full vessel. As she makes her way through the cabin, she passes a mysterious figure whose face is obscured by a deep hood. She settles into her seat, but her instincts flare as she feels a heavy, familiar gaze burning into the back of her neck. Ursula studies the man's silhouette, trying to place why his physical posture triggers such a strong sense of recognition. The captain suddenly deviates from the planned route, ignoring Ursula's technical assessment of the ship's current heading. Ursula demands an explanation, her hand drifting toward her concealed weapon as the atmosphere in the cabin turns hostile. The captain reveals the true nature of the trip, stating that a mysterious client is waiting to collect her at a different location. Armed mercenaries emerge from the shadows of the boat, effectively trapping Ursula in a coordinated pincer maneuver. She scoffs at their amateur attempt to intimidate her, her eyes hardening with the professional coldness of a seasoned assassin. In a blurred display of speed, Ursula draws her submachine gun and unleashes a hail of lead into the group of kidnappers. The sound of a dry click echoes through the cabin, signaling that her weapon has run out of ammunition at the worst possible moment. The captain sneers as he presses the cold barrel of his pistol against the side of Ursula's head, thinking he has won. His triumph is short-lived as a new weapon is suddenly pressed against his own temple by an unseen passenger. The hooded stranger demands that the crew drop their arms and seize their assault on the woman immediately. The captain tries to bluff his way out, but the stranger pulls back his hood to reveal the icy, lethal gaze of Seymour Gillespie. Ursula's eyes widen in disbelief as the hooded passenger reveals himself to be none other than her commander, Seymour Gillespie. With a cold, calculated gaze, Seymour warns the mercenaries that he has more than enough ammunition to eliminate them all if they don't retreat immediately. Ursula feels a sudden surge of complicated emotions, realizing that despite her defiance, she actually missed his presence during her brief absence. The commander remains focused on the threat, his profile sharp and unforgiving against the backdrop of the open sea. Realizing they are outmatched by the legendary operative, the captain yields the deck, though he spits a final vow of vengeance over his shoulder. Once the immediate danger passes, Ursula questions why Seymour let the traitors walk away, noting that such mercy is uncharacteristic of his usual methods. Seymour turns his attention to her, explaining that her current popularity means she is being tracked by far more dangerous entities than a simple yacht crew. The pair shares a moment of tense bickering, with Ursula frustrated that she walked blindly into such an obvious maritime trap. She explains her desperate need to reach the island, admitting she never expected her only means of transport to be an enemy vessel. Her expression softens as she describes the vision of the beautiful sanctuary, filled with blooming pink flowers that haunts her dreams. She looks up at Seymour with a rare, genuine smile, momentarily setting aside their professional rivalry. Seymour looks away, his silence speaking volumes as he ignores her question about why he chose to save her, instead of seeking retribution for her earlier betrayal. Ursula maintains her guard, arguing that utilizing fear and threats is far more efficient than relying on soft, emotional tactics. A flicker of surprise crosses Seymour's face as he processes her cynical view of their partnership. He maintains a stoic mask, refusing to let her see the emotional toll her constant suspicion takes on him. Ursula leans in close, whispering that her only true loyalty is to her own survival and interests. Seymour challenges her perspective, asking how she would react if the roles were reversed, and he was the one who had turned against her. Her eyes harden as she declares she would hunt down any traitor to the ends of the earth, to ensure they faced a final punishment. A dark smirk plays on Seymour's lips as he asks if she expects the same lethal fate for herself if she continues on her current path. Ursula accepts the terms of her dangerous life, stating that if her end comes at the hands of her partners, it is simply the price of her choices. Seymour sighs, noting with a hint of bittersweet recognition that her stubborn nature has remained unchanged despite her amnesia. He gestures toward the horizon, offering to personally escort her to the mysterious location she's been searching for. He mentions the pink blossoms and her lost memories, showing he knows far more about her quest than he previously let on. Ursula's breath hitches as she realizes he is fully aware of the secrets she thought were hers alone. He confirms her deepest suspicion by mentioning the existence of the buried time capsule, bridging the gap between their shared past and present. Meanwhile, the captain watches from a distance, his eyes narrowed as he prepares a final, explosive surprise for the pair. Convinced that Ursula has outlived her usefulness now that her destination is confirmed, the captain gives the order to eliminate her. The force of a sudden explosion throws Ursula into the freezing depths, her body sinking helplessly into the dark water. Seymour dives in after her, his silhouette cutting through the churning sea as he reaches out to save her one more time. Ursula's consciousness fades as she drifts toward the ocean floor, the name of her protector the last thing on her mind. Sometime later, she stumbles onto the sun-drenched sands of a remote shore, gasping for air as she realizes she survived the ordeal. She frantically scans the coastline, her heart sinking as she finds no sign of Seymour among the waves. Huddled alone on the vast beach, she feels the crushing weight of her isolation and the fear that her savior may have drowned. Guilt washes over her as she reflects on how Seymour consistently protected her despite her constant doubts and hostility. She pulls her knees to her chest, mourning the man she treated as an enemy even though he bore her no true malice. Frustration boils over as her memories remain frustratingly out of reach, leaving her stranded in a past she cannot fully claim. A sudden rustle in the dense jungle foliage alerts her tactical instincts, forcing her to stand and face a new potential threat. She cautiously peers into the thick tropical brush, her eyes searching for the source of the noise. Pushing through the final barrier of leaves, her eyes widen as she discovers something hidden within the heart of the island. She stands frozen in awe as she gazes upon a secluded house surrounded by the very pink flowers that have haunted her dreams. A small boat cuts through the shimmering waves as gulls circle above the abandoned pier. The captain gloats to his crew, convinced that he's finally eliminated the legendary operative known as Hyena. He pulls out his smartphone, eager to report the successful assassination to his shadowy employer. His smug expression falters when the call fails to connect, leaving him staring at a dead signal. Sweat beads on his brow as a sudden, unnatural paralysis freezes his muscles mid-motion. Emerging from the shadows of the deck, Howard sits perched on the railing with a suppressed pistol aimed at the incapacitated crew. The doctor casually explains that he administered a fast-acting drug, while the mercenaries were distracted by their own hubris. He steps closer, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper as he demands to know Ursula's exact destination. Howard mocks the captain's incompetence, laughing at the sheer absurdity of a low-level thug thinking he could outsmart a predator like Ursula. He smirks at the thought of the debt Ursula is racking up, clearly relishing his role as her unexpected guardian. Across the water on Wave Island, a secluded wooden lodge stands silent amidst a grove of blooming cherry blossoms. Ursula cautiously steps through the front door, her boots clicking softly on the floor of the abandoned living quarters. The afternoon sun filters through the windows, illuminating a space that feels strangely frozen in time. A powerful sense of déjà vu washes over her as she surveys the familiar layout of the room. She notices a delicate tea set resting on a side table, a domestic detail that feels hauntingly intimate. Her breath catches as she realizes that every corner of this house holds the undeniable traces of her own existence. She approaches an old-fashioned television set, sensing that the answers to her past are hidden nearby. On the shelf below, she discovers a dusty VHS tape with her own name scrawled across the label. With a steady hand, she slides the tape into the player and prepares to confront her history. The screen flickers to life with a burst of static before a grainy image begins to form. The video reveals a younger Ursula, her face bright with a level of happiness she no longer recognizes. She watches as her younger self playfully teases a shy, stoic boy who is unmistakably a young Seymour. Ursula stands mesmerized, watching the undeniable proof of a childhood she thought was permanently erased. The footage captures a moment of pure innocence as she chases Seymour through the house, their laughter echoing through the room. A tall, distinguished man enters the frame, looking at the children with a gaze full of paternal pride. Tears blur Ursula's vision as she finally puts a face to the uncle who once served as her protector. On the screen, young Seymour looks directly into the camera and mentions a secret buried beneath the tree in the yard. The revelation hits her like a physical blow, grounding her scattered memories into a single, concrete objective. She sprints out into the garden, heading straight for the massive cherry blossom tree that dominates the landscape. Dropping to the ground, she digs into the dirt with frantic, desperate movements. Her face is a mask of intense concentration as she unearths the physical remnants of her former life. Her fingers brush against cold metal, revealing 2 pristine golden cylinders hidden beneath the roots. She pulls the time capsules into her lap, her heart racing as she realizes the truth is finally within her grasp. She carefully unseals the first capsule, her hands trembling with a mix of anticipation and dread. Inside, she finds a weathered letter, the ink still legible after more than a decade. A fleeting mental image of her family standing together under the blossoms flashes through her mind as she reads. She discovers Seymour's childhood confession, a letter promising to protect her and stay by her side forever. The sheer weight of his lifelong devotion breaks her composure, and a single tear falls onto the parchment. Ursula collapses into a fit of silent, racking sobs, mourning the man who gave everything to keep her safe. A small, candid photograph falls from the envelope, showing a moment of peace they can never reclaim. Wiping her eyes, she reaches for the second capsule, the one she buried herself. Her eyes widen in absolute shock as the contents of the container are finally revealed to the light. Resting at the bottom is the legendary square seal, the missing artifact that the entire underworld has been hunting. She stares at the golden seal in disbelief, wondering how a child could have been entrusted with such a world-altering secret. Suddenly, a voice calling her name forces her to snap back to the present in a state of high alert. Howard emerges from the tree line, his white lab coat fluttering in the breeze as he finds her at last. Reacting with the speed of a seasoned professional, Ursula quickly hides the priceless artifact behind her back. Ursula's eyes go wide with shock as she realizes Howard has tracked her to the island. Howard looms over her like a predator, questioning her motives for lingering on the shore. A tense standoff ensues as Ursula tries to mask her panic while Howard scans her for any sign of deception. He leans in with a mocking tone, laughing at the idea of an elite assassin getting sentimental over a childhood time capsule. A devious smirk crosses his face as he notes how much her personality has softened since her memory loss. Ursula maintains a stony silence, her mind racing to find a way to escape his suffocating presence. She casually adjusts her hair to regain her composure, unaware that Howard is watching her every move. Hidden within the dark locks of her hair, the golden square seal remains perfectly concealed from the doctor's prying eyes. Howard maintains his professional distance, jokingly claiming his only concern is keeping her body in pristine condition for his collection. He shifts the conversation to Seymour, cruelly suggesting the commander has been turned into fish food after the explosion. The mention of her partner triggers a visceral reaction, her eyes glowing with a sudden, intense focus. Howard confirms her fears with a chilling grin, relishing the power he holds over her current emotional state. Desperation seeps into her voice as she demands to know the exact location of her missing protector. He leans in to deliver the final blow, whispering that Seymour is nothing more than a corpse lying in the grass. Ursula remains frozen on the ground as Howard points toward the nearby tree line where a body supposedly rests. Inside a secluded cabin, Seymour lies unconscious on a bed, his pale skin glistening with a dangerous fever. Ursula sits by his side, her tactical coldness replaced by a quiet, professional concern as she calls his name. The commander's eyes flutter open, his vision blurred as he struggles to regain consciousness in the dimly lit room. He jolts awake in a panic, stunned to find Ursula acting as his primary caregiver after their chaotic separation. A rare, gentle expression softens his features as he realizes they both survived the maritime ambush. In a brief moment of professional relief, he pulls her into a firm embrace to acknowledge their shared survival. He regains his usual playful edge, teasing her for showing such high levels of concern for his well-being. Howard suddenly bursts into the room, his face twisted in a comical rage as he demands Seymour keep his hands off his partner. The commander's gaze turns icy as he meets Howard's challenge, his protective instincts flaring up instantly. He tightens his grip on Ursula, signaling that he has no intention of backing down from the eccentric doctor. The air crackles with hostility as the two men engage in a silent, lethal stare-down over their conflicting roles. Ursula finally loses her patience, shouting at the top of her lungs for both of them to stop their childish bickering. Howard feigns deep emotional injury, clutching his chest and accusing her of favoring the commander over him. His mood shifts instantly as he flashes a radiant, smug grin when Ursula refuses to validate Seymour's importance. Howard crosses his arms triumphantly, reminding everyone that he has been Ursula's most reliable business associate for the past year. Seymour responds with a dark, knowing look, implying that their decades of shared history far outweigh a single year of collaboration. The doctor's face contorts into a hilariously frustrated expression as he realizes he can't easily dismiss their deep bond. He angrily points out that he was the technical expert who actually saved Seymour's life and dressed his wounds. Seymour is left speechless, his annoyance evident as he's forced to acknowledge his rival's medical assistance. Howard lets out a mocking laugh, telling the commander to overcome his physical weakness if he wants to stay in the game. Ursula stands trapped between the two glaring operatives, her expression one of utter exhaustion and disbelief. She looks at the defiant Seymour, seeing a clear reflection of the stubborn, protective boy from her lost childhood. Howard's tone turns serious as he warns that the commander's internal injuries will prove fatal without immediate rest. Back at the pier, the aftermath of the previous skirmish is visible in the bloodstains covering the weathered wood. An elderly operative oversees the cleanup, his face a mask of grim determination as he plans their next move. He issues a final, lethal directive to his men, ordering them to hunt down the pair and ensure no survivors remain. Beneath the surface of the harbor, a discarded smartphone sinks into the abyss, severing their last link to the outside world. Howard lets out a massive yawn, his body finally feeling the strain of a sleepless night spent stabilizing the commander. His eyes are heavy with fatigue, yet he maintains a sharp, irritable focus on his patient. Despite the friction between them, Howard provides a steady shoulder for the weakened Seymour to lean on as they navigate the house. The doctor snaps at the commander, ordering him to use the evacuation boat and leave the island immediately. Howard's expression shifts to one of sudden alarm as a distant sound disrupts the morning air. Ursula's hand shoots up, pointing toward a rising pillar of smoke on the horizon. Her face pales as she realizes their only means of escape has been compromised. She sprints toward the cliffside, confirming that the boat is engulfed in a violent blaze. Ursula scans the perimeter with a tactical eye, noting the arrival of a heavily armed hit squad. Seymour remains calm, revealing the existence of a hidden underground channel built directly beneath the lodge. Outside, the mercenaries advance in a tight formation, their weapons trained on the entrance of the building. Howard huddles in the cramped stone cellar, his claustrophobia clearly getting the better of him. The doctor suggests a cold-blooded tactical withdrawal, arguing that Seymour's injuries will only slow them down. Seymour ignores the insult, raising a lantern to illuminate the dark path ahead for the group. They descend into the damp tunnels, the flickering light casting long, dancing shadows against the rough walls. Seymour's gaze narrows as he spots a specific marking on the stone masonry. With a precise movement, he applies pressure to a hidden trigger mechanism concealed within the rock. A heavy stone slab rumbles into place, effectively sealing the path and separating them from the doctor's position. Ursula looks up at the commander, her voice a whisper as she asks if he intentionally triggered the partition. Seymour holds her steady, noting that it's safer for now if Howard remains ignorant of her current memory loss. He leans in with a solemn expression, emphasizing the need for absolute secrecy regarding her condition. Ursula signals for silence, acknowledging that her amnesia is a technical vulnerability they cannot afford to expose. A faint, knowing look crosses Seymour's face as he accepts his role as her primary protector. Their conversation is cut short as the sound of boots echoing through the stone passage reaches their ears. The hit squad discovers the hidden entrance, their flashlights cutting through the dust of the collapsed masonry. Seymour drops to a low crouch, his body coiled and ready to strike despite his physical limitations. A mercenary levels his pistol at the pair, sneering at what he believes is an easy kill. Seymour's lips curl into a lethal smirk, retorting that the bad luck belongs entirely to the intruders. He slams his hand against a secondary emergency release hidden in the tunnel wall. The ceiling structural supports give way, burying the mercenaries under a sudden, violent avalanche of rock. Ursula rushes to his side as the dust settles, relieved to see he managed to avoid the falling debris. She peers into the darkness, calculating how many operatives are still pursuing the medic. Her focus shifts to Seymour's thigh, where a fresh bloom of blood is staining his professional bandages. Seymour dismisses the pain, urging her to keep moving before the next wave of attackers arrives. His eyes remain sharp and unyielding, driven by a singular mission to get her off the island safely. As they emerge from the tunnel, a mysterious silhouette stands waiting for them amidst the swirling mist. As the mist swirls around the tunnel exit, a tall, imposing silhouette stands waiting like a phantom in the gloom. Ursula and Seymour immediately tense up, their eyes narrowing as they prepare to face what they assume is another wave of elite enemies. The tension snaps as the figure steps forward, revealing Howard, who mockingly notes that he's glad he won't have to carry Ursula's corpse back home. The doctor immediately turns his sharp tongue on Seymour, scoffing at the commander's disheveled and battered appearance. Seymour doesn't miss a beat, firing back that looking rough is still better than being a coward who ran away when the fighting started. Howard's composure breaks into a comedic tantrum as he insists he wasn't fleeing, but was actually luring the assassins away from their position. Ursula cuts through the bickering, focusing on the tactical reality that they need to hijack an enemy ship to finally get off this island. Her gaze hardens with a cold, professional resolve as she vows to identify the mastermind who has been relentlessly hunting her. Seymour offers a solution, suggesting she stay at his private villa for protection, and Ursula finds herself agreeing to the arrangement. Howard is absolutely incensed by the suggestion, demandingly questioning what right the commander has to keep Ursula so close. With a calm, devastating level of confidence, Seymour drops a bombshell that leaves the doctor speechless. He claims to be her husband. The sudden declaration triggers a hazy memory for Ursula, recalling a moment under the cherry blossoms when Seymour asked for her hand in marriage. Howard desperately tries to sway her, painting Seymour as a dangerous man who doesn't deserve her trust or her hand. Ursula remains caught in the crossfire of their rivalry, her expression one of pure bewilderment as she tries to process Seymour's claim. The commander maintains his poise, softly telling her there's no need to give him a final answer or a rejection just yet. He stares Howard down, asserting that a marriage alliance with him is the most logical and secure path for her future. The sun begins to set over the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant shades of orange as their journey across the sea continues. Their vessel finally docks at a private pier, marking their successful return from the chaos of Wave Island. A squad of Seymour's personal security detail stands at the ready, formally greeting their boss as he steps onto the wood. The subordinates immediately notice the commander's limp, but he dismisses the concern as nothing more than a minor flesh wound. Seymour prepares to head inside to properly dress his injuries, leaving Ursula with a final reminder to consider his proposal. Howard attempts one last time to bring Ursula to his own quarters, his eyes searching hers for any sign of compliance. She shuts him down with a sharp look, stating she has her own clandestine business to attend to before the night is through. As she watches them leave, Ursula theorizes that the legendary square seal might be the key to her fractured memories. The evening light fades at the harbor, and she realizes that carrying such a high-value artifact is a death sentence if she's caught. Under the cover of total darkness, Ursula arrives at a sprawling, high-security mansion nestled in the forest. Moving with the grace of a ghost, she scales the walls and vaults through an open window into the silent interior. She looks down at the golden square seal, deciding that Seymour's own home is the last place anyone would think to look for it. Her heart skips a beat when the sudden sound of approaching footsteps echoes from the hallway outside the room. The heavy brass handle of the door begins to turn, signaling the arrival of the master of the house. Seymour enters his private quarters accompanied by an aide, completely unaware that an intruder is lurking in the shadows. The commander stops in his tracks, his tactical instincts instantly alerting him to a foreign presence in the dark room. He draws his sidearm with lethal precision, barking an order for the lights to be switched on immediately. The room floods with light, illuminating the closed door of the adjacent bathroom where the intruder is hiding. Seymour levels his weapon at the door, his voice cold as ice as he commands the trespasser to reveal themselves. The door slowly creaks open, revealing a sliver of light from the room beyond. Seymour keeps his finger on the trigger, his face a mask of intense, unwavering focus as he prepares for a confrontation. His eyes widen in genuine shock, his breath catching as he realizes exactly who has broken into his sanctuary. Ursula stands there wrapped in a simple white towel, offering the quick-witted excuse that she simply needed to use his facilities. Recognizing the absurdity of the situation, Seymour orders his confused subordinate to exit the room and leave them alone. The aide bows and retreats instantly, closing the door on the two elite operatives as the atmosphere turns thick with tension. Seymour steps forward and places his hand firmly against the wall, effectively pinning Ursula in place for a private interrogation. He leans in close, his gaze burning with intensity as he asks her what her true objective is for being in his home. The two stand in a heavy silence, the physical proximity between them amplifying the gravity of their unspoken history. Seymour tilts his head down, his voice a low, commanding whisper as he warns her that he will accept nothing but the absolute truth. Seymour demands absolute honesty as he corners Ursula in his private quarters. He waits in silence, analyzing her every movement for any sign of deception. Ursula maintains her facade, finally agreeing to his claim that they are married. She leans in close, masking her true intent to uncover the square's secrets. Seymour reacts with a mix of shock and intense satisfaction at her answer. She confirms the alliance, securing her position within his inner circle. Internally, she trusts only her own instincts to navigate this lethal game. They stand together in the room, both hiding their true tactical agendas. Seymour senses she is still keeping vital information hidden from him. He embraces her, deciding to address his lingering suspicions at a later time. Ursula interrupts the moment, stating she has one non-negotiable condition for the union. He listens intently, giving her the floor to negotiate her terms. She calculates that a grand public event will help restore her fractured memories. Seymour promises a perfect ceremony to solidify their bond to the world. She pushes him to begin the official arrangements without any further delay. Jokwin expresses pure outrage over his boss's decision to marry an assassin. Seymour coldly warns his subordinate to maintain professional respect. Jokwin reminds him of the past betrayal and his uncle's tragic death. The commander remains unmoved, claiming the truth behind that death is complex. He issues a final order for the engagement party to be planned immediately. Jokwin exits the office, clearly disturbed by the commander's reckless path. City lights shimmer as a new conspiracy begins to take shape in the shadows. Sabrina watches the broadcast from her hideout, mocking the sentimental display. Her phone vibrates on the table, displaying a call from the unsuspecting Joaquin. She answers with a smirk, curious about his late-night communication. The news of the sudden engagement leaves her momentarily stunned. Sabrina is visibly shaken, realizing the stakes have just risen significantly. She quickly pivots, offering to help manage the event to gain internal access. Joaquin is easily manipulated by her sudden cooperative and helpful tone. He hangs up, satisfied that the party logistics are finally on track. Sabrina's expression turns murderous as she vows to stop the marriage. The scene shifts to a luxury boutique where final dress preparations are underway. Ursula admires her reflection in a striking gown designed for a queen. A mysterious woman enters the room under the guise of a shop assistant. Their eyes meet in the reflection, sparking an immediate sense of danger. Ursula's training kicks in as she instantly seizes the suspicious intruder. The woman reveals her identity, warning Ursula that Seymour is her deadly enemy. The more morning light filters through the grand archway of the luxury boutique, signaling the start of a high-stakes preparation for the upcoming engagement. Seymour stands outside the fitting room, his posture rigid as he waits for Ursula to reveal her selection for the ceremony. Behind the heavy velvet curtains, Ursula maintains a lethal grip on the mysterious intruder, who desperately whispers for her to eliminate the commander while the opportunity remains. Ursula's gaze narrows as she weighs the stranger's warning against her current alliance, her mind racing to determine if this is a trap or a genuine warning. Sensing a change in the atmosphere, Seymour leans toward the partition, his ears picking up the faint sound of the hushed exchange. His eyes sharpen with a predatory intensity, instantly detecting that something is amiss within the private stall. Without a word, he reaches for the curtain, his hand hovering over the fabric as he prepares to expose whatever secret is being kept from him. Ursula reacts instantly, extending her hand through the gap to intercept his movement and maintain her cover. Seymour watches her slender fingers against the dark curtain, his suspicion remaining as he waits for her next move. Suddenly, Ursula sweeps the curtain aside and bursts out with a forced, radiant laugh, using the dramatic reveal of her red gown to mask the presence of the spy. The commander is momentarily caught off guard by the bold choice of attire, his professional composure wavering for a split second. Ursula steps forward, her heels clicking firmly on the floor as she closes the distance between them to keep his back to the fitting booth. She leans into his space, playing the part of the devoted fiancé with a level of precision that would fool any observer. Seymour maintains a strictly professional focus as he examines the fit of the gown, his hand checking the structural integrity of the fabric. He leans in close to provide a technical critique, noting that the design might be too provocative for a high-profile political gathering. Their faces are inches apart as he suggests she reconsider the style, his gaze searching hers for any sign of the hidden intruder. Watching through a sliver in the curtains, Sabrina fumes with indignation, misinterpreting the commander's technical assessment as a personal affront to her boss. Her eye twitches with a protective rage, her loyalty to Ursula nearly overriding her tactical training. Sabrina shifts her weight, her foot sliding forward as she prepares to burst out and confront the commander head-on. Ursula's internal alarms flare as she notices the subtle movement behind her, her expression hardening with the need to maintain control. She quickly initiates a close tactical maneuver, tilting her head to perfectly block Seymour's line of sight toward the fitting room. Sabrina freezes in place, her face contorted in a comical mix of shock and confusion as she witnesses their proximity. Behind her back, Ursula's hand performs a sharp, authoritative wave, signaling for her subordinate to retreat and remain silent. Sabrina obediently steps back into the shadows, realizing she must follow the plan despite her personal frustrations. Seymour pulls back slightly, his brow furrowing as he questions the strange rustling sound coming from behind the curtain. Ursula doesn't miss a beat, gently pulling on his tie to redirect his attention and keep the focus entirely on their interaction. The tension breaks into a moment of calculated playfulness as Ursula complains about the dress becoming wrinkled under his firm grip. Their private session is interrupted by a sharp knock at the door, followed by an aide announcing the arrival of the persistent Kelly Hughes. Seymour's expression turns to one of cold annoyance, making it clear he has no desire to entertain the Commerce Guild leader's daughter. Ursula, however, insists on the meeting, viewing it as a prime opportunity to gather intel on her rivals. She realizes that if Seymour leaves to handle the guest, it will provide the perfect window for Sabrina to slip away undetected. Seymour leans in one last time to assert his authority, reminding her that he expects absolute transparency as they move forward. In the lobby, Kelly Hughes waits with a look of bored entitlement, confident that her presence cannot be ignored. The door finally swings open as Seymour enters the room, his face a mask of professional indifference toward the visitor. Kelly immediately switches to a bright, deceptive smile, attempting to mask her true intentions with a layer of false charm. They stand face to face in the sunlit room, the air thick with the unspoken history of their family's conflicting interests. Kelly's tone turns lethal as she drops the pretense, questioning how he could ever consider marrying the woman responsible for his uncle's demise. She takes a defiant step forward, her heels echoing through the quiet room as she challenges his loyalty to his own blood. Hidden just out of sight, Ursula listens to the accusation, her eyes turning cold as she realizes the web of lies is becoming even more tangled. Seymour remains silent, his expression unreadable as the memory of the man who adopted him flickers through his mind. Ursula stares back in silence, the weight of a deep-seated grudge beginning to settle heavily in her chest. The sharp click of high heels echoes through the deserted streets as she breaks into a desperate sprint. She finds her path blocked by a towering silhouette, his presence commanding the narrow alleyway. Her eyes flash with a cold, piercing intensity as she warns him not to interfere with her escape. He catches her arm, his grip firm as he pleads with her to understand the danger of leaving right now. Desperation lines his face while he begs her to trust him just this once to clear her name. Ursula's gaze hardens into a mask of pure defiance, rejecting any offer of help from the commander. He warns her that fleeing now will only confirm the world's suspicion that she is a cold-blooded killer. Her voice drops to a lethal whisper, making it clear that no one will stand between her and her objective. A haunting purple glow ignites in her eyes, signaling the awakening of her most dangerous instincts. She strikes with blinding speed, her movements a blur as she prepares to cut down the man she once called an ally. Ursula jolts awake with a sharp gasp, her eyes wide as the remnants of the nightmare fade into the dim light. Seymour immediately pulls her into a comforting embrace, trying to steady her racing heart after the terrifying vision. A fragmented memory of a fallen man surfaces, reminding her of the complex tragedy that still haunts Seymour's lineage. She studies his face in the soft light, wondering if the gentleness he shows her is a genuine emotion or a calculated tactic. His eyes remain fixed on her with an intensity that makes it impossible to discern his true hidden agenda. To Ursula, he still feels like a shadow reaching out from the darkness, a man whose motives are shrouded in mystery. She pulls back slightly, her expression guarded as she questions why he is observing her so closely. Putting on a playful facade, she offers a lighthearted remark to test his reaction and lower his defenses. Seymour leans in with a sudden, overwhelming proximity, challenging her to admit if she's hoping for a softer approach. Their gazes lock in a silent battle of wills, both searching for a crack in the other's professional armor. She settles into his hold, playing the part of the devoted fiancé while her mind continues to map out her next move. A faint, satisfied smile touches his lips as he encourages her to trust no one else but him in this den of vipers. Hidden from his view, her eyes ignite with that same lethal purple fire, a silent vow that she trusts only herself. The sun shines over the sleek exterior of the Grand Chamber of Commerce, where the next phase of the plan begins. Sabrina stands at the ready, using a pointer to brief a disguised Ursula on the intricate power structure of the four chambers. She explains how a single false witness turned the tide of public opinion, branding Ursula as a traitor to the guild. Ursula listens from beneath a wide-brimmed hat, her composure regal as she processes the depth of the conspiracy against her. The two women discuss the fallout of the missing square seal, and how it systematically dismantled Ursula's hard-earned reputation. Sabrina recounts how they fought back in secret, striking from the shadows to reclaim their influence over the Vermilion Bird. Ursula realizes she must have brokered a precarious peace to maintain the balance of power during her missing years. She issues a direct command for Sabrina to hunt down the witness and uncover the truth behind the uncle's murder. Reviewing the evidence, Ursula concludes that she had no logical hand in the death of Seymour's benefactor. Her gaze turns sharp and predatory as she focuses on the ultimate question: who is the real killer pulling the strings? Seymour stares down the powerful Mr. Hugh, accusing the man of orchestrating the lethal ambush on the island. Mr. Hugh lets out a dismissive laugh, leaning back with his cigar, as he denies any involvement in the strike against his own family. He maintains a patronizing facade, claiming he would never dream of hurting those close to him while casually tapping the ash from his cigar. His expression shifts to a cold, jagged edge as he reminds Seymour that Ursula is the traitor who murdered the previous leader. To drive the point home, a silent bodyguard suddenly levels a pistol at Seymour's head, underscoring the deadly stakes of the conversation. The two men sit in a tense stalemate across a map-etched table, the choice between absolute loyalty and total betrayal hanging in the balance. The camera pans out to the cold, shimmering lights of the city skyline, where the next phase of this conspiracy is being plotted. Back at the mansion, Ursula cautiously pushes the door open, her silhouette framed by the dim light of the hallway. Suddenly, a strong hand reaches out from the darkness, pulling her into the room with startling force. Seymour catches her in a firm embrace, his physical presence acting as a silent interrogation in the shadows. His gaze is heavy and unreadable as he demands to know exactly where she went while he was occupied. Ursula maintains her composure, offering a smooth cover story about finalizing her dress for the engagement ceremony. She playfully tests his boundaries, asking if he intends to keep her a prisoner within the mansion walls. Seymour's face remains a mask of professional intensity, stating he simply cannot afford any mistakes before the party begins. Noticing the shift in his aura, Ursula asks if his meeting with the guild leaders yielded any troubling results. He remains silent for a long beat, his eyes searching hers for any sign that she is still hiding her own secrets. Their shadows loom large against the wall as he admits a sudden fear that his fiancée might change her mind about their union. He leans in close with a cryptic look, suggesting he needs to ensure she stays exactly where he can see her. Seymour physically maneuvers her with a dominant, calculated focus, ensuring she understands who is in control of this alliance. The heavy doors click shut as the household staff retreats, leaving the two lead operatives alone in the silence. Once the coast is clear, Ursula's expression instantly hardens, her playful facade evaporating into a cold, tactical glare. She firmly pushes him back, demanding that he stop the games and tell her what is actually happening. Seymour reaches out to steady her, his voice dropping as he asks if her memories of the square seal have finally surfaced. Ursula's eyes widen in genuine shock, the direct mention of the artifact catching her completely off guard. The next morning, the sun rises over a luxury estate where a hidden struggle for the truth continues to unfold. Ursula prepares for the day in casual attire, her mind racing to stay one step ahead of the commander's suspicions. She peers cautiously around a doorway, checking the perimeter for any of Seimer's lingering observers. Sensing a foreign presence, she draws her weapon with blinding speed, her instincts screaming that she's been cornered. A slow, mocking round of applause echoes from the corner of the room, signaling the arrival of an uninvited guest. Howard sits comfortably in a high-backed chair, taunting her that the commander's luxury hasn't made her soft. Ursula keeps her weapon leveled at him, her gaze icy as she demands to know why he has broken into her sanctuary. Howard stands to face her, the air between the former allies thick with a new and dangerous tension. He steps into her space and discreetly activates a small recording device, claiming he has information she needs to hear. Ursula's expression turns grim as she prepares to face a truth that could shatter her current strategy. The recording begins to play, revealing the secret confrontation where Seimer was held at gunpoint by Hugh's men. Seimer's voice rings out from the speaker, sounding chillingly detached as he discusses the terms of their marriage. On the tape, the commander explicitly states that he is only using Ursula as a pawn to locate the missing square seal. Mr. Hugh listens to the declaration with a look of smug, calculating satisfaction, knowing he has the commander under his thumb. Hugh's eyes narrow with a predatory gleam as he prepares to issue his final, most lethal command. He makes a sharp, throat-slitting gesture, ordering Seimer to secure the artifact and then eliminate Ursula permanently. Seimer coldly admits he's only marrying Ursula to manipulate her into revealing the square seal's location. His eyes narrow as he prepares to lay down his final, non-negotiable condition for this alliance. Mr. Lane reacts with visible agitation, his hand tightening around his weapon as the power dynamic shifts. Seimer remains unfazed, demanding total control over the Kylan Chamber of Commerce as his price for loyalty. He lounges with predatory confidence, knowing he holds more value than any common henchman. Back in the mansion, the heavy atmosphere weighs on Ursula as she faces Howard's unsettling presence. Howard wears a mocking grin, taunting Ursula about the commander's true whereabouts. He leans in to drop a bombshell, claiming Seimer is currently at a hotel preparing to wed Kelly Hugh. Howard whispers the cutting details, suggesting the rival bride is even wearing the gowns Ursula selected. Ursula's sneakers pivot sharply on the floor as she moves to confront the reality of this betrayal. She walks away without a word, her silence masking a growing, lethal intent. Howard lets out a manic laugh, asking if she's finally ready to take down the man who played her. Her expression hardens into a cold mask, her focus narrowing on a single, decisive objective. She reaches for the exit, desperate to escape the confines of her gilded cage. Joaquin suddenly blocks her path, his stern gaze making it clear she isn't permitted to leave the room. The standoff intensifies as Howard watches the guard prevent Ursula from making her move. Howard finds the situation amusing, mocking the fact that Ursula has been assigned a personal watchdog. Shadows fall over Ursula's face as the crushing realization of her confinement sinks in. At the cathedral, the grand ceremony begins as Seimer stands at the altar with Kelly. The commander's face is a portrait of icy indifference as the priest begins the traditional vows. He hesitates for a fleeting second, his gaze distant as he prepares to bind himself to the Hugh family. The doors burst open as Mr. Lane storms the wedding, brandishing a firearm to halt the proceedings. Seymour's professional mask cracks slightly, surprised by the boldness of the internal coup. Lane sneers behind his sights, declaring that he won't let Seimer seize his commerce chamber without a fight. Back at the mansion, a gunshot shatters a decorative vase, signaling the start of a chaotic struggle. Ursula lets out a chilling laugh, sensing that reinforcements have arrived to turn the tide. Joaquin's eyes widen in disbelief as he hears the approaching footsteps of an unexpected intruder. He turns toward the door, his tactical training struggling to process the identity of the newcomer. The guard stands frozen, his breath catching as he recognizes the woman standing before him. Sabrina emerges from the shadows, her weapon leveled with lethal precision at her former associate. Joaquin gasps her name, his voice trembling with a mix of shock and betrayal. Their gazes lock in a silent, painful moment of recognition between two people on opposite sides. Exploiting the distraction, Howard strikes with a heavy blow to the back of Joaquin's neck. The guard collapses instantly, his body hitting the floor as the immediate threat is neutralized. Sabrina's tough exterior falters for a moment, her eyes filled with a sudden, visible conflict. Howard mocks her emotional reaction, questioning why she would waste any pity on their enemy. Ursula watches the exchange with a sharp, calculating gaze, demanding to know the truth behind their hidden connection. Joaquin lies sprawled and unconscious on the cold floor, the immediate obstacle finally neutralized. Ursula's gaze hardens with a new, singular purpose as she prepares to depart for next objective. Howard and Sabrina exchange a look of concern, questioning where their leader could possibly be heading in such a state. A chilling smile plays on Ursula's lips as she declares her intent to crash the most important engagement party in the city. Sabrina remains behind to maintain control of the situation, gently supporting the fallen guard as she signals for Ursula to move forward. The Grand Cathedral stands as a silent witness to the chaos, its holy facade scarred by the remnants of a violent explosion. Outside the perimeter, Howard and Ursula survey the wreckage of the ceremony, where ambulances and police tape now replace the wedding flowers. Ursula's expression is a mask of cold calculation as she prepares to step into the heart of the wreckage to find her target. Inside the chapel, Mr. Hugh dismisses the failed coup with a sneer, frustrated that Jack Lane's desperation nearly ruined his plans. Seymour turns toward the entrance, his face marked with the physical toll of the struggle, but his eyes remaining sharp and predatory. Ursula storms through the aisle and delivers a stinging slap across Seymour's face, the impact echoing through the silent, ruined hall. She stands defiant before him, her voice dripping with venom as she mocks him for hiding behind another woman's influence. A bright red mark blooms across Seymour's cheek, a physical testament to the bridge she has just burned between them. He meets her gaze with an unnerving calm, stating coldly that he has absolutely nothing to explain to her. Kelly Hu interjects with a shriek of indignation, ordering Ursula to leave the event she claims as her own. Ursula offers a patronizing smile, reminding the younger woman that this entire engagement was hers until only a few hours ago. Her eyes flash with a lethal intensity as she issues a final, grim warning about the man Kelly thinks she has won. Driven by rage, Kelly raises her hand to strike, but her movements are slow and predictable compared to the operative before her. Ursula's hand shoots out with lightning speed, catching Kelly's wrist in a grip that is as firm as a pair of iron shackles. She leans in close, her tone dropping to a whisper that promises a world of pain if the girl dares to test her again. Mr. Hugh steps between them to maintain a shred of decorum, sensing that the situation is rapidly spiraling out of his control. Seymour finally breaks his silence, his voice low and authoritative as he demands an end to the violence for the day. Ursula turns her back on the assembly, her silhouette framed by the sunlight as she vows that this is only the beginning of her retaliation. Seymour watches her retreat, his unreadable stare lingering on her, as if measuring the depth of her renewed hatred. An aide rushes to Mr. Hugh's side to report the embarrassing news that their primary target, Mr. Lane, has vanished into the shadows. Hugh's face contorts with a mix of annoyance and grudging respect for the man who managed to slip through his fingers. Watching Seymour lead Kelly away, the commerce leader realizes he has lost a valuable pawn in this high-stakes game of shadows. Hidden beneath the brim of his hat, Hugh's eyes narrow as he realizes the coward he once manipulated has evolved into a dangerous wolf. Seymour looks back one last time, his aura pulsing with a dark, calculated energy that signals he is no longer anyone's subordinate. Mr. Hugh exits the cathedral flanked by his personal security detail, his mind already spinning new webs of conspiracy. He pauses in the sun-drenched courtyard, feeling the weight of the shifting power dynamics within the guild. The veteran conspirator's gaze turns sharp, his instincts screaming that he is being watched from the nearby shadows. Ursula steps out from behind a stone pillar, surprising him with her presence and an unexpected offer of an alliance. Hugh looks at her with blatant skepticism, wondering what could drive his greatest enemy to seek his cooperation. She explains her terms with chilling clarity. She wants Seymour crushed, and she's willing to hand over the square seal to make it happen. The commerce leader studies her intently, weighing the value of the artifact against the danger of the woman offering it. A heavy silence hangs between them as the two master manipulators lock eyes in a silent battle of wits. Suddenly, Mr. Hugh erupts into a dark, mocking laugh that echoes through the empty courtyard. His expression shifts into something truly monstrous, his eyes glowing with a predatory light as he dismisses the importance of the seal. He signals his men to close in, declaring that eliminating the threat she posed to his leadership is far more important than any treasure. Ursula stands her ground between Alan's enforcers, pointing out that his political connections have been fraying since he took power. She wears a knowing smirk, asking him if he's ever stopped to consider exactly where his grand strategy went off the rails. Alan's men tower over her in the courtyard as the leader demands to know what point she's trying to drive home. Ursula explains that the square seal is far more than a simple badge of office. It is the ultimate symbol of the leader's absolute authority. Alan leans forward, his curiosity piqued as he steps closer to hear the secrets of the artifact. She whispers that the seal is the key to a hidden network of influence that stretches deep into the political world. The scene shifts to a few days prior, where Seymour holds Ursula's face with a grave intensity during a secret briefing. He asks if she can recall anything about the square seal, his eyes searching hers for any flicker of memory. Seymour pulls her closer, insisting that regardless of her amnesia, she must memorize the message he is about to deliver. Ursula listens with wide-eyed focus as he instructs her to deliver a specific set of instructions to Alan Hugh himself. He reminds her that while Alan once needed the seal to legitimize his rise, he now tries to act as if the artifact holds no value. Ursula strikes a powerful pose, internalizing the mission to prove to the guild leader that she is an indispensable asset. Back in the present, she challenges Alan directly, asking if he's finally ready to discuss a formal cooperation. Alan remains wary, questioning how he can be certain this isn't just another elaborate trap set by the hyena. He admits he has a political problem requiring immediate attention and demands she provide concrete proof of her claims. The sun shines over the palatial estate of the Vermilion Bird Chamber of Commerce, the staging ground for their next move. Sabrina enters the office with a professional stride, carrying the intelligence reports the boss has been waiting for. She slides the documents across the desk, identifying the specific pressure points currently causing Alan Hu's greatest headache is. Ursula reviews the data with a sharp, analytical gaze, knowing exactly how to exploit the guild leader's weaknesses. Suddenly, the office doors fly open as a frantic guard tries to stop an uninvited guest from barging inside. Seymour strides into the room with an air of cold defiance, ignoring the security detail trailing behind him. Ursula remains seated with a look of practiced annoyance, ordering her staff to vacate the room immediately. A tense montage of faces shows the high-stakes friction between the operatives as they prepare for a private confrontation. The aides exchange uneasy glances before finally retreating, leaving the two leaders to settle their scores in private. From a high angle, Seymour appears to plead for forgiveness, playing the role of a desperate man trying to salvage a broken bond. Ursula turns away with a look of pure disgust, declaring that she is officially finished with his games. Seymour accepts her rejection with a solemn nod, turning to leave the office as if their alliance has been shattered forever. He steps out into the hallway, maintaining the facade of a defeated man for the benefit of any watching eyes. Once the doors are safely shut, Ursula's expression softens, her tactical mask slipping for a brief moment of relief. She asks him if he truly believes their public breakup will be enough to deceive a man as paranoid as Alan Hugh. Seymour offers a faint, calculating smile, explaining that his persistence will only serve to confirm their rift in the eyes of the spies. He leans in close to her, his voice dropping as he emphasizes the need to root out the moles hidden within both of their organizations. Ursula matches his intensity, teasingly asking if the fearless commander is actually starting to feel the pressure. He lets out a soft, genuine laugh, admitting that his only real fear is the thought of losing her in this dangerous game. Ursula remains silent, her gaze lingering on him as she processes the weight of his uncharacteristic honesty. She pivots to a darker subject, asking if he truly believes she had no hand in the murder of his beloved uncle. Seymour looks down, the memory of his past hatred flickering in his eyes before being replaced by a new clarity. He looks her directly in the eye, stating firmly that he now knows she is completely innocent of that particular crime. A sudden knock at the door forces them back into their roles, their eyes snapping toward the entrance with professional speed. Ursula warns him that he needs to leave immediately before his presence blows their cover with Alan's watching spies. Seymour gives a final, sharp look of warning, reminding her to stay vigilant while she maneuvers within Alan's inner circle. She physically shoves him toward the door, shouting for him to get lost to maintain the illusion of their bitter feud. Seymour stumbles out into the corridor, playing the part of the discarded lover to perfection. He pauses to regain his composure, his face hardening as he prepares to face the next phase of their complex operation. Howard waits for him in the shadows, greeting the commander with a calm, knowing expression as they prepare to move out. Ursula's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as she finds Howard standing right in the middle of her private office. Howard meets her gaze with a playful smirk, casually leaning against the wall as if he belongs there. Seymour bristles at the intrusion, demanding to know what business the medic has interrupting their discussion. Ursula's suspicion deepens as she realizes Howard has a habit of appearing exactly when things are at their most volatile. Howard shoots back a sharp retort, questioning why Seymour is still lingering around Ursula, despite his own high-profile engagement. The two men stand locked in a heated glare, the air thick with mutual disdain as they fight for the final word. Ursula finally snaps, stepping between the rivals to put an end to their unprofessional bickering. She shoots a cold, dismissive look toward Seymour, making it clear that his time in her office is officially up. Seymour takes the hint and turns to depart, his expression unreadable as he maintains the facade of their public fallout. The grand chandelier above casts long shadows across the room, emphasizing the weight of the secrets still lingering between them. Howard watches Seymour leave with a triumphant air, standing his ground as the sole remaining visitor. He leans in with a conspiratorial whisper, boasting that his network of informants ensures he's never out of the loop. His smile takes on a darker edge as he jokes about the lethal consequences of being pushed too far. Ursula doesn't flinch, countering with her own icy promise of retaliation if he continues to waste her time. Howard pivots back to business, casually mentioning that the specialized pills she requested are finally ready for delivery. Ursula's expression shifts to one of sharp focus at the mention of the mysterious destination known only as Aish. She dismisses the urgency, stating she will handle the exchange on her own terms when she finds a moment of peace. Howard raises an eyebrow, warning her that missing the deadline for this particular task could carry a heavy price. He notes that Ursula's current irritability is quite a departure from her usual cold and composed self. Her eyes flash with a violet intensity, clearly reaching the limit of her patience for his psychological games. She commands him to shut up, the mounting stress of dealing with Seymour clearly beginning to fray her nerves. Howard retreats toward the exit, his hands raised in a mock gesture of surrender as he leaves the room. He continues to taunt her from the hallway, feigning fear at the intensity of a woman dealing with a complicated past. Alone at last, Ursula reflects on the dangerous game she's playing and the looming threat of failure if the pills are late. She stands in the center of the lavish room, her silhouette a picture of solitary determination amidst the chaos. Outside the office, Joaquin appears visibly shaken, the emotional weight of his recent betrayal etched onto his face. Sabrina watches him walk away, her own posture rigid as she struggles to maintain her professional composure. Ursula notices the tension in the room as her protege approaches, sensing a shift in the younger woman's demeanor. Sabrina stands bathed in the soft light of the office, her eyes glistening with unshed tears that she desperately tries to hide. A single tear escapes and tracks down her cheek, betraying the depth of the conflict she feels regarding Joaquin. She quickly denies her sadness, her voice trembling slightly as she tries to mask the obvious emotional toll of the mission. Ursula looks down from her desk, observing the scene with the detached eye of a leader who has seen it all before. She asks directly if the fallout with the guard is the source of Sabrina's sudden distress. Sabrina hardens her tone, insisting that their connection was purely tactical and is now officially a thing of the past. Ursula offers a rare moment of guidance, telling Sabrina to follow her own heart to avoid the poison of regret. Sabrina looks away, her expression clouded with doubt, as she considers the impossibility of their opposing loyalties. Ursula's gaze softens for a fleeting second, seeing a reflection of her own internal struggles in the younger operative. She warns Sabrina never to expect a man to change his core nature, emphasizing that self-reliance is the only true shield. Suddenly, a dark vision of herself manifests in Ursula's mind, mocking her for the weakness of her own heart. The phantom version of Ursula whispers, cutting reminders of the times she was lied to and manipulated by those she trusted. Ursula's breathing hitches as the mental pressure builds, her eyes wide with the fear of falling for the same trap again. Sabrina rushes to her side in concern, snapping Ursula back to the reality of the quiet office. Recovering her mask of stone, Ursula pivots the conversation toward the critical information she needs to proceed. She asks Sabrina if she has any intel on the mysterious entity or location known only as Aish. Sabrina confirms that Ace refers to a notorious underground auction house, a detail she had almost forgotten to mention. Ursula's expression turns predatory as she realizes this pharmaceutical connection is the exact lead Alan Hugh was searching for. Sabrina hands Ursula a plain brown envelope containing a high-stakes invitation that could change everything. Ursula examines the documents while asking her assistant about her pharmaceutical partner, only to find that even her inner circle is kept in the dark. Her eyes narrow with a cold resolve as she realizes that a direct meeting with the mysterious Aish is now her only path forward. She holds up a slip of paper featuring a cryptic phone number, the only lead she has to the underground auction house. Standing in a classic red telephone booth as the city lights shimmer around her, Ursula dials the number and waits in a heavy, expectant silence. A sleek black sedan suddenly cuts through the night, pulling up to the curb with clinical precision. Ursula hangs up the receiver, her face a mask of calm readiness, as she prepares to meet her mysterious escorts. She steps out of the booth to find two imposing men in suits approaching her from the shadows of the vehicle. The security detail stands at stone-faced attention, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses as they assess the hyena. Ursula greets the lead operative with a professional nod, signaling her willingness to proceed with the clandestine rendezvous. Her violet eyes glow with a sharp, calculating intensity as she prepares to step into the lion's den. A guard presents a silver tray holding a black blindfold, proving that the phone call was merely a signal for their arrival. The scene shifts to the sprawling city skyline, where the towering skyscrapers hide the guild's most dangerous secrets. The car eventually arrives at a grand, upscale estate where additional guards maintain a vigilant watch at the entrance. The lead escort tells Ursula she can finally remove her blindfold, welcoming her to a place he calls home. Ursula slowly pulls the silk mask away, her gaze immediately sweeping across the unfamiliar and opulent surroundings. She finds herself in a breathtaking lobby featuring a massive double staircase and a shimmering central fountain. Her escorts lead her up the grand stairs, the luxury of the architecture masking the dark nature of the business conducted here. They come to a halt before a pair of heavy wooden doors, informing her that the boss is waiting inside for their consultation. Ursula pushes the doors open, her expression guarded as she steps into the private chambers of the auction house leader. She scans the dimly lit room, her instincts immediately screaming that she has entered a highly volatile environment. Inside, a striking red-haired woman sits like a queen among her subordinates, exuding an aura of absolute, terrifying authority. A man nearby desperately pleads for mercy, his voice cracking with fear as he looks toward Ursula for a shred of hope. He stares up with wide, pleading eyes, begging the newcomer to intervene before his situation turns lethal. Ursula watches the scene with a cold, detached curiosity, refusing to be manipulated by the man's emotional display. The red-haired leader takes a slow puff from her long pipe, her voice dripping with disdain for her pet's pathetic behavior. With a chilling finality, she orders her men to drag the failure away to be dealt with by the guards. Ursula suddenly calls out for them to stop, her voice cutting through the tension of the room like a blade. The leader turns her sharp gaze toward Ursula, mocking the idea that a cold operative would actually care for a discarded pawn. She casually dismisses the threat as a scare tactic, claiming that in their society, They only break limbs to teach a proper lesson. Ursula questions the woman's professional relationship with the man, her mind already working to map out the power structure of each. The hostess identifies the man as a merchant who failed to deliver, drawing a direct parallel to Ursula's own current mission. She issues a subtle, lethal warning, hoping Ursula won't make the same mistake and end up as a subservient pet. A servant approaches with a tray, offering Ursula a glass of dark red wine to officially begin their negotiation. Ursula accepts the drink, but keeps her focus entirely on the technical details of the pharmaceutical shipment. The red-haired woman remains unbothered, her eyes reflecting a predatory patience as she observes her guest's every move. She invites Ursula to sit and chat, the atmosphere thickening with the unspoken dangers of this high-stakes meeting. Ursula brings the glass toward her lips, but pauses as a strange, chemical scent catches her trained senses. The hostess leans in close, her eyes flashing with a challenge as she questions Ursula's hesitation to drink the vintage. Ursula meets the woman's gaze with unwavering intensity, realizing that this beverage is far more than a standard toast. The leader exhales a thick cloud of smoke toward Ursula, mockingly asking if she is truly afraid of being poisoned. Suddenly, Seymour emerges from the shadows to catch Ursula as her legs give out and her composure finally breaks. Seymour glares at the red-haired woman identified as Haley Garcia, demanding to know what chemical agent she has used. Haley scoffs at his protective stance, dismissively explaining that she merely administered a specialized pill with no known antidote. Seymour holds Ursula close to his chest, his expression darkening as he realizes the severity of the pharmaceutical attack. Ursula's face flushes and her breathing becomes labored as the effects of the drug take hold, leaving her completely vulnerable. Seymour finally succumbs to exhaustion, his eyes closed as he maintains a state of tactical rest beside his partner. Ursula studies his sleeping face with a mix of suspicion and frustration, finding it harder than ever to decipher his true intentions. Seymour's eyes snap open, catching her off guard as he questions if she's ready to resume their high-stakes collaboration. Ursula scoffs at his confidence, asserting that a single night of recovery is more than enough time for an operative of her caliber. Seymour narrows his eyes, his professional mask slipping for a moment, as he processes her sudden shift back to cold efficiency. He reaches out to stabilize her, noting that her pragmatic outlook makes her a formidable but dangerous ally to maintain. Ursula demands to know the source of the pharmaceutical attack, her mind racing to identify what lackeys was responsible for her condition. Despite the lingering fever, her expression turns predatory as she vows to return the gift Haley Garcia gave her with interest. Her gaze hardens with a new plan, realizing that a direct counterstrike is the only way to regain the upper hand in this negotiation. Seymour offers a dark, knowing smile, promising to guide her through the specific weaknesses of their red-haired adversary. Elsewhere, the mysterious Ms. Miller stands in the shadows of her office, reprimanding her subordinates for underestimating the hyena. Haley Garcia remains defiant, presenting herself with an air of superiority, while questioning why they bother with such a volatile traitor. Ms. Miller's expression is grim as she warns Haley that Ursula is not an opponent who will ever let a personal slight slide. The tense atmosphere is shattered when a guard bursts in, shouting that an intruder has breached the security of their subterranean dungeon. Haley's composure cracks as she demands the name of the infiltrator, only to hear the inevitable confirmation. It's Ursula Lambert. Deep within the facility, Ursula and Seymour move through the shadows, their primary objective now focused on a critical extraction. Ursula reaches the iron bars of a high-security cell, her motives purely tactical as she prepares to seize Haley's most prized asset. Inside the cell, a battered man looks up, his presence the key to dismantling the auction house's current power structure. Ursula steps forward with clinical precision, her heels clicking against the cold floor as she prepares to claim her prize. Seymour pauses, questioning if this brazen theft from Haley Garcia might be pushing their luck too far. Ms. Miller and Haley arrive with a full security detail, their faces twisted in a mix of fury and disbelief at Ursula's audacity. Ursula greets them with a cold smirk, pointing out that the auction house is hardly in a position to lecture others on the ethics of theft. Haley bristles at the accusation, her voice rising in anger as she attempts to defend her organization's integrity. Ursula cuts her off, detailing a complex web of deception involving Alan Hugh and a stage-custom seizure. A subtle, triumphant smile touches Ursula's lips as she watches the realization of her tactical insight dawn on her opponents. Ms. Miller tries to maintain her poise, dismissively labeling Ursula's detailed breakdown as nothing more than wild speculation. Ursula counters by highlighting the suspicious silence in the city's news cycles, proving the entire pharmaceutical bust was a fabrication. Ms. Miller's eyes widen as she realizes the operative has successfully tracked the missing goods directly to her own dungeon. Standing beside Seymour, Ursula warns that if Alan Hugh discovers he's being played, the auction house's reputation will be permanently liquidated. She leans in with a final, icy proposition, offering a way for the organization to escape this lethal trap without further bloodshed. Ms. Miller remains stoic but listens intently, signaling for Ursula to proceed with her terms for the resolution. The first condition is clear: The hijacked batch of weapons must be immediately returned to Alan Hugh to pacify the Commerce Guild. Ursula adds a chilling detail, revealing she found a timed explosive hidden among the crates that would have ended the auction house tonight. The weight of the threat sinks in as Ms. Miller stares back, forced to acknowledge that she has been completely outplayed. Ursula concludes her demands with a sharp, final condition. She is taking the prisoner with her as payment for her silence. Seymour casts a skeptical glance at Ursula, questioning the true motives behind her calculated maneuver. He wonders if this is merely a petty vendetta against Haley, or if she's pursuing a much deeper, more personal agenda. Ursula offers a cryptic smirk, asking if he's finally developed an interest in the finer details of her tactical vision. Realizing she's been checkmated, Ms. Miller begrudgingly orders her staff to release the prisoners along with a hijacked shipment. Haley's eyes burn with a silent, murderous promise that this humiliation is far from over. Outside the facility, a heavy transport truck is loaded under the watchful eyes of the victorious operatives. William Bailey looks up from his wheelchair, his face brightening with genuine gratitude for his unexpected liberators. He introduces himself as a specialist in the raw jade trade, offering his unique expertise to Ursula as a gesture of loyalty. Seymour lets out a sharp click of his tongue, clearly unimpressed by the new recruit's sudden display of devotion. Ursula notices his irritation and playfully warns him to keep his professional composure instead of turning red. Seymour takes charge of the extraction, firmly pushing the wheelchair toward the exit to secure their perimeter. Ursula watches them retreat into the distance, her mind momentarily clouded by the heavy atmosphere of the auction house. Suddenly, a wave of disorientation hits her, her pupils dilating as the world around her begins to blur into a dark haze. Her balance falters, her high heels clicking unevenly against the cold pavement as she loses her footing. The elite operative collapses to the floor, her body finally succumbing to the lingering physical strain of the night. She finds herself trapped in a dimly lit chamber, the shadows closing in as her consciousness flickers. Ursula forces herself to look up, her survival instinct screaming as she senses a hostile presence nearby. Haley sits, perched on a chair above her, looking down at her fallen rival with a chilling sense of triumph. Ursula spits out a defiant remark, mocking Haley for being far too eager to claim a victory she hasn't earned. Haley's lips curl into a sinister smile as she declares that her personal game of retribution can finally begin. Her gaze turns feral as she expresses her sadistic desire to see the hyena broken, and pleading for mercy. Ursula's expression tightens with alarm, realizing that the situation has devolved into a brutal test of endurance. Haley stands and lashes out with a whip, the weapon cutting through the air with a lethal, high-pitched crack. She grips the handle with a white-knuckled intensity, pouring all her suppressed rage into the strike. Ursula barely manages to dive out of the way, her movements hindered by the confined space of the dungeon. The tip of the leather whip strikes the stone floor inches from her heel, sending sparks flying in the darkness. Haley mocks Ursula's agility, taunting her for not having the foresight to secure her own escape route. Her eyes glow with a predatory light as she claims that hunting a fleeing opponent is the only way to make the chase exciting. Ursula scans the room in a panic, desperately asking where Seymour has gone during this sudden ambush. Haley laughs off the question, advising Ursula to focus entirely on her own rapidly deteriorating survival odds. She raises the whip high, threatening to make Ursula her new permanent toy to replace the one she just lost. Ursula ducks behind a row of industrial barrels, using the environment to create a temporary barrier against the assault. A sharp sting rings out as the whip connects with her shoulder, the impact forcing a pained gasp from the operative. Haley stalks around the metal drums, impressed that Ursula is still finding ways to prolong the inevitable. Peering from behind her cover, Ursula questions if this madness is just about the prisoner or if Haley is simply a rabid dog. Haley sneers, revealing that her hatred stems from Ursula's association with a man she despises. Ursula's eyes narrow in confusion, demanding to know exactly who Haley is referring to in this cryptic grudge. With a scream of pure loathing, Haley reveals that her true target is the elusive Howard Wright. Another strike catches Ursula across the arm, the sound of the leather hitting skin echoing through the chamber. Haley lets out a manic laugh, challenging Ursula to find a hiding spot that her reach cannot find. She prepares for a final, finishing blow, her face twisted in a mask of absolute malice. Ursula is driven back onto her knees, the coils of the whip wrapping around her frame like a constricting snake. Suddenly, Ursula's hand shoots out, gripping the length of the whip with a strength that defies her injured state. Haley's face pales as she realizes her primary weapon has been neutralized in a single, decisive motion. Ursula pulls the handle close to her face, a cold, dominant smirk returning as she informs Haley that the power dynamic has just shifted. Ursula seizes the advantage, pinning Haley against the wall with a sudden surge of tactical adrenaline. Haley's arrogance flickers as she realizes the hyena isn't as weakened by the toxin as she initially assumed. The redhead sneers with glowing eyes, warning that any lethal strike against her would be a direct declaration of war against the Aish organization. Ursula dismisses the threat, asserting that her actions are purely a matter of professional self-defense against an unauthorized kidnapping. She shifts the focus of the interrogation, demanding to know the exact origin of Haley's deep-seated resentment toward Howard Wright. Ursula tightens her grip on the whip's handle, ensuring her opponent remains completely immobilized and unable to strike. Haley recoils, her breathing coming in ragged gasps as the pressure of the physical confrontation begins to take its toll. A silhouette appears in the doorway, and Ursula turns her head to see her partner finally arriving at the scene. She greets him with a dry, mocking remark, noting his distinct lack of punctuality in securing the extraction zone. Seymour rushes forward to assess the situation, his eyes scanning Ursula's frame for any life-threatening injuries. He places a steadying hand on her face, offering a rare, solemn promise that he won't let her fall into such a vulnerable position again. Ursula allows herself a brief, genuine smile, acknowledging the relief of having her most trusted ally back by her side. Haley interrupts the moment with a sharp shout, reminding the duo that she is still a factor in this high-stakes dungeon standoff. Seymour looks to Ursula for direction, questioning the most efficient way to dispose of their captured adversary. Ursula decides to keep her alive, viewing Haley as a valuable bargaining chip for future negotiations with the 8 leadership. The operation shifts to a sun-drenched industrial site as heavy transport trucks prepare for a massive shipment transfer. A wooden crate is pried open to reveal a cache of high-grade tactical hardware intended for the Commerce Guild. Alan Hugh meticulously inspects the weaponry, satisfied that his business interests have been properly secured by Ursula's team. Ursula stands beside the guild leader, maintaining her professional facade as they discuss the fallout of the recent customs seizure. She explains that the successful resolution was only possible by leveraging the strategic influence of the Square Seal. Ursula details how she used classified political intelligence to force the local authorities into immediate cooperation. Alan turns the conversation toward Seymour, curious about how Ursula plans to neutralize her former partner. He offers a calculated incentive, promising Ursula the ultimate opportunity for retribution once Seymour is finally handed over. Ursula keeps her expression neutral while internally labeling the guild leader a dangerous and manipulative strategist. Under the cover of night, the focus shifts to a secluded estate where a secret meeting is about to take place. Ursula cautiously enters the dimly lit study, her senses heightened for any sign of a lingering security breach. A pair of hands suddenly reach out to prevent her from activating the light switch, maintaining their tactical concealment. She is swiftly pinned against the door, the sudden impact of the physical contact echoing through the quiet room. Seymour emerges from the shadows, and Ursula questions the wisdom of meeting so close to Alan Hughes' surveillance network. He insists that a private briefing is necessary to discuss the long-term status of their newest asset, William Bailey. Ursula scoffs at his concern, teasing him for taking such a personal risk just to discuss mission logistics. She outlines her next move, faking a public falling out with Seymour to shift her focus onto securing William's loyalty. Seymour's expression darkens as he repeats her plan to pivot her professional attention toward the Jade specialist. He rejects the proposal immediately, his voice dropping to a low, authoritative tone that brooks no argument. He firmly takes hold of her hands, grounding her in the reality of their current partnership. He pulls her into a tight, protective embrace to emphasize his stance on the matter. Seymour locks eyes with her, reiterating his refusal to let her stray from their established operational plan. Ursula meets his gaze with a defiant smirk, questioning why she shouldn't seek out new strategic alliances to further the mission. The two remain locked in a tense standoff, neither willing to yield on their tactical approach to the infiltration. A sudden knock at the door interrupts them as a staff member offers to bring up some evening tea for the guests. Ursula uses the distraction to mock Seymour's position, suggesting that her new ally has better timing than he does. Seymour leans in, his focus intensifying as he prepares to deliver a final, decisive point regarding their cover story. He maintains a firm grip on her, ensuring she understands the gravity of the secret they are forced to share. He pulls her into a final, close-quarters hold, whispering a reminder that their professional destinies are permanently intertwined. In the quiet of the study, a stack of mission dossiers is scattered across the desk during their heated debate. Seymour suddenly corners Ursula against the furniture, his movements calculated to assert his dominance over the operation. He leans in with a low whisper, questioning if her rush to leave is driven by a sudden interest in the Jade specialist waiting outside. Ursula pushes back against his chest, her eyes flashing as she declares her utter hatred for being managed or controlled by anyone. Seymour pauses, his gaze turning analytical as he considers what truly motivates a woman of her volatile nature. He maintains a stoic silence, his focus remaining locked on the tactical challenge she presents to his authority. Ursula adjusts her professional attire, the intricate lace of her operative gear reflecting her high-status position within the hierarchy. Seymour reaches out to finalize their proximity, questioning if she expects him to cater to her every strategic whim. The sudden intensity of their confrontation sends a nearby glass tumbling to the floor with a sharp, echoing crash. A muffled voice calls out from the hallway, checking to see if Ursula is unharmed after the sudden noise. The door creaks open just an inch, threatening to expose the two partners in their compromised position. Ursula quickly composes herself, casting a sharp glance toward the entrance to maintain her professional emotional facade. William Bailey enters the room in his wheelchair, offering a tray of calming tea to help her recover from the night's stress. Seymour remains in the background, his expression darkening as he observes the new asset's growing devotion to Ursula. Ursula steps forward to block William's view, dismissing him with a cold reminder that the hour is far too late for social calls. William lingers, presenting a bright red envelope that arrived via a courier from the Commerce Guild. Ursula's breath catches as she realizes the weight of the new development, her face flushing from the sudden shift in stakes. She manages a strained smile, urging William to retire for the night, while she handles the sensitive correspondence. The specialist looks back one last time, his concern for Ursula's well-being evident in his hesitant departure. With the room clear, Seymour's smirk returns, finding a dark amusement in the complex web of loyalties Ursula is weaving. He studies her reaction intently, noting that her physical cues often betray the cold logic she tries to project. Refusing to play his games, Ursula shoves the red invitation directly into his chest to focus him back on the mission. They examine the document together, identifying it as a direct summons to Alan Hughes' upcoming birthday gala. Seymour offers a chilling grin, acknowledging that while the event is clearly a trap, it's an opportunity they cannot afford to ignore. Later that evening, the grand estate of the Commerce Guild leader is illuminated by a sea of lights for the high society event. Ursula makes a stunning entrance in a shimmering gown, publicly parading William Bailey as her newest protected associate. She leans down to whisper a final instruction, ordering the specialist to keep his eyes sharp for any sign of Alan's security detail. Her attention is suddenly pulled away as she spots a familiar silhouette watching her from across the crowded ballroom. Seymour stands alone amidst the festivities, his rigid posture and formal suit making him look like a predatory shark in a sea of goldfish. His eyes burn with a visible, protective fury as he watches Ursula play her role with such convincing grace. Seeking a moment of tactical privacy, the two operatives slip away toward the secluded corridor near the guest facilities. Seymour corners her immediately, demanding to know why she chose such a critical moment to bring the Jade specialist into the line of fire. He leans into her personal space, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl as he accuses her of trying to provoke his temper. His gaze drops to her lips for a fleeting second, the professional boundary between them thinning under the pressure of the assignment. Ursula grips his lapels, reminding him that they are currently surrounded by enemies and have no time for personal grievances. Seymour ignores her protest, pulling her into a sudden, protective hold to ground them both before the chaos begins. They share a brief, high-tension contact, a silent acknowledgement of the lethal risks they are about to face together. Ursula pulls back, her eyes reflecting a rare moment of genuine concern as she orders him to survive the night at any cost. Ursula navigates the desolate corridors of the estate, her footsteps echoing against the cold, high-gloss floors. She suddenly freezes as a muffled, agonized groan vibrates through the heavy silence of the hallway. Her instincts flare as she scans the area, her sharp eyes searching for the origin of the rhythmic distress call. The sound grows more distinct, emanating from behind a section of the wall that doesn't quite match the surrounding architecture. She narrows her gaze, focusing her tactical intuition on the specific point where the ventilation seems to fluctuate. The elite operative leans against the cold surface, her fingers searching for a hidden latch or pressure plate. With a decisive click, she pushes the heavy stone panel aside, revealing a path into the structure's dark underbelly. Ursula stares in grim silence at the sight of Jack Lane, bound in chains and submerged in a basin of crimson liquid. She looks down at the captive with a cold, analytical detachment, unmoved by his desperate state. Standing at the edge of the vat, she maintains a professional distance as she listens to the prisoner's frantic gasps. Jack Lane pleads for his release, promising to lead her to the secret witness who can clear her of the guild leader's frame-up. Ursula's expression remains unreadable as she calculates the potential fallout of bringing such a liability back into the light. She towers over him, considering his claim that a high-level mole has been operating right under her nose this entire time. The realization hits her like a physical blow as her mind immediately centers on the one person with the medical access to deceive her. The prisoner's eyes bulge with terror, seeing that the hyena has already connected the dots to the traitor's identity. She casts her gaze downward, her hair veiling her face as she processes the deep sting of Howard Wright's betrayal. Her pupils dilate with a violet glow, her mind racing to determine if his entire persona was a manufactured lie from the start. She recalls Howard's calm, supportive presence, now viewing his gentle nature as a calculated tool for espionage. Jack Lane begins to tremble, sensing that his life hangs by a thread as Ursula's focus shifts toward cold retribution. Reaching out with a steady hand, she grips the edge of the industrial basin to begin the extraction process. She decides that any asset capable of causing Alan Hughes significant tactical damage is a gamble worth taking. The sharp crack of a distant gunshot tears through the air, snapping her back into a state of high-alert combat readiness. Ursula looks back at the submerged prisoner, realizing she must secure the area and return to the gala before her absence triggers an alarm. Back in the grand ballroom, the atmosphere of celebration has dissolved into a chaotic swirl of panicked socialites. Kelly Hugh collapses onto the floor in despair, unable to comprehend the sudden, violent turn of her father's birthday event. Ursula moves through the crowd to find William Bailey, demanding an immediate situational report on the erupting conflict. William explains that Alan Hughes staged a poisoning to frame Seymour, forcing the commander into a desperate tactical retreat. The operative sneers at the news, recognizing the guild leader's move as a transparent attempt to claim the moral high ground before a kill. The focus shifts to a rugged cliffside where a unit of armed security personnel has successfully cornered their quarry. Ursula arrives at the edge of the perimeter, observing the high-stakes standoff unfolding against the backdrop of the ocean. She realizes that while Alan still needs Seymour for their trade agreement, his patience for the commander's defiance has reached its limit. Seymour stands defiant at the center of the trap, aiming his weapon with a steady hand as he mocks the guild leader's amateurish theatrics. Alan Hughes steps into the light, his face twisted with a mask of righteous indignation as he faces his son-in-law. The elder statesman raises his own handgun, declaring that he needs to personally witness Seymour's downfall to feel at ease. Muzzle flashes illuminate the cliffside as the two men engage in a frantic, close-quarters exchange of fire. A spray of blood paints the air as Seymour's eyes widen in shock, the reality of the ambush finally finding its mark. Seymour's body goes limp as he plunges backward over the jagged edge of the cliffside. Sabrina lets out a visceral scream of horror, her eyes wide as she watches her commander vanish into the abyss. The ocean spray erupts as the figures disappear into the churning waters below, leaving the cliff top desolate. Ursula rushes to the precipice, her voice strained as she calls out for her protégé amidst the crashing waves. A cold, violet light flickers in Ursula's eyes as she suppresses her panic to calculate the survivor's chances. Alan Hughes steps forward with a sneer, relishing the moment he believes he has finally broken the hyena's spirit. Ursula turns a glacial gaze toward the guild leader, refusing to let him see even a single crack in her professional armor. The elder statesman gestures toward the sea, demanding the immediate surrender of the square seal now that her allies are gone. Ursula takes a steadying breath, grounding herself in the tactical reality that Sabrina is far more resilient than she looks. She narrows her focus on Alan, her mind racing to find a way to stall for time without losing her leverage. A sharp, mocking smile plays on her lips as she questions the logic of carrying a priceless artifact into a literal war zone. Alan's face twists into a grotesque mask of false hospitality, suggesting they move the negotiation to a more private location. Ursula's expression hardens into steel as she flatly rejects the invitation, sensing the lethal trap hidden behind his words. The guild leader's composure snaps, his voice booming across the cliff as he accuses her of violating their sacred business pact. The screech of tires cuts through his tirade as a black transport vehicle skids to a halt on the rocky terrain. Armed guards emerge from the car, dragging out the unconscious forms of the extraction team they managed to intercept. Ursula's heart sinks as she recognizes her own operatives, her calculated backup plan crumbling an instant. Seymour is hauled forward, his clothes stained with blood and his hands bound tightly by industrial-grade rope. She stares at the battered commander in stunned silence, realizing that Alan's web of surveillance was far more extensive than she anticipated. One of the mercenaries roughly handles a captive, boasting about how easily they neutralized the supposed elite rescue unit. Ursula stands isolated against a sea of armed men, her silhouette a lone beacon of defiance against the guild's overwhelming force. Alan leans into her personal space, his voice a low growl as he mocks her for underestimating his tactical ruthlessness. He studies her face intently, questioning why a woman of her reputation would bother saving a man she claims to despise. Ursula remains motionless, the sweat of high-stakes pressure glistening on her brow as she searches for an opening. She meets his interrogation with a look of pure, unadulterated venom, her patience for his psychological games exhausted. She reminds him with chilling clarity that her relationship with Seymour is a matter of private professional history. Her gaze remains locked on Alan, asserting that her only concern is the successful completion of the trade. Ursula's pupils dilate as she prepares to leverage what remains of her influence to secure Seymour's survival. She mocks Alan's incompetence, pointing out that his reckless violence nearly destroyed the very bargaining chip he needs. The guild leader pauses, his analytical mind trying to determine if her defiance is a genuine threat or a desperate bluff. She issues a final, non-negotiable demand for the release of her personnel in exchange for the square seal's location. Ursula looks down at the incapacitated Seymour, her expression unreadable as she treats him as a piece of high-value cargo. Alan signals his men to stand down, curious to see how the hyena intends to handle her fallen rival. She asserts her dominance over the situation, claiming she requires Seymour's confinement to personally oversee his interrogation. A trail of cigarette smoke drifts into the frame as a familiar, mocking voice interrupts the tense standoff. Howard Wright emerges from the shadows, his casual attire and arrogant posture confirming his role as the ultimate puppet master. Ursula's blood runs cold as she and Alan turn to face the man who has played them both for fools. The mole offers a dark, triumphant smirk, clearly relishing the absolute chaos he has unleashed upon the Commerce Guild. Howard explains his tracking of Ursula, viewing her as a vital specimen for his experiments. He leans in with a chilling reminder that her demise would only make his data collection easier. Ursula maintains her composure, flatly dismissing his unsettling behavior as a mere distraction. Howard pivots the conversation, questioning which containment facility she has prepared for the captured commander. The mole offers a dark assurance that regardless of the location, He intends to enjoy the upcoming interrogation. Alan Hugh concedes the point, admitting his previous hesitation was a tactical oversight. He orders his security detail to transfer custody of the prisoners to Howard immediately. The guild leader issues a final warning, expecting the square seal to be delivered without further delay. Within a secluded medical bay, surgical instruments are prepped for a high-stakes recovery operation. Seymour finally regains consciousness, his body heavily bandaged from the cliffside ordeal. Ursula looms over him, noting that his survival depends on his willingness to cooperate with her demands. The commander questions the terms of the deal she struck with Alan to secure his life. She silences him with a sharp gesture, signaling that their current environment is far from secure. Howard interrupts from the shadows, mocking the unusually lenient treatment of their high-value prisoner. He brandishes a scalpel, suggesting a more invasive method to extract the information they need. Ursula rejects his interference, asserting that she has already established a psychological interrogation plan. Howard retreats to the doorway, deciding to observe her unconventional methods from a distance. The hyena leans back in, reminding Seymour that his fate now rests entirely in her hands. She observes his physiological response, questioning why his breathing is labored, despite the lack of abdominal trauma. Seymour admits to a localized sensitivity, his expression hardening under the intense scrutiny. Ursula finds a tactical advantage in this vulnerability, her mind calculating how to use it for their cover. She retrieves a specialized disciplinary tool, preparing to demonstrate her control for their observer. She whispers a command for him to follow her lead to maintain the facade of a brutal interrogation. Seymour plays his part, questioning the price of his eventual release from her custody. Ursula tightens the restraints, ensuring the visual of his confinement is convincing for Howard. She brings up their past failures, framing the interrogation as a personal debt collection. Her smile remains cold as she warns him against underestimating her resolve in this mission. Seymour scoffs at the humiliation, challenging her to use whatever methods she deems necessary. Howard grows frustrated with the pace, demanding to know if they are conducting an interrogation or a social call. Ursula counters that the most effective psychological pressure is applied with careful precision. Disgusted by the lack of immediate results, Howard slams the door to let them conclude their business. With the observer gone, Seymour's hands flex as he prepares to shift the power dynamic. He lunges forward, catching Ursula off guard with a sudden burst of suppressed energy. He clamps a hand over her mouth to prevent any noise from alerting the guards outside. Seymour mocks her choice of props, reminding her that their professional partnership is far from over. Ursula glares at him, her eyes burning with a silent demand for his immediate release. He agrees to a temporary truce, provided she assists him in removing the restrictive handcuffs. Ursula immediately pivots back to the mission, noting they have less than 2 days before Alan loses patience. Seymour reaches out to steady her, his focus shifting from the objective back to his partner. They remain in the dimly lit room, 2 elite operatives trapped in a web of their own making. He voices his frustration, noting her tendency to prioritize the guild leader over her own allies. Seymour locks eyes with her, questioning if he is truly nothing more than a tactical asset in her eyes. Ursula warns Seymour to stay focused, her hand trembling slightly as she scans the room for any sign of Howard's imminent return. Seymour looks up at her with a grim intensity, questioning if they should wait for the brink of death to finally address the rift between them. Ursula hardens her expression, her mind prioritizing the survival of the unit over any burgeoning personal sentiment. She remains locked in her tactical mindset, convinced that her duty to the mission must always outweigh her own emotional needs. Seymour's gaze drops as he realizes his patient approach is failing to breach her professional defenses. He shifts his weight on the exam table, requesting her assistance in properly dressing the severe wounds sustained during the cliffside fall. The commander suddenly closes the distance, seizing the initiative to force her into a more direct confrontation. Ursula's breath hitches as she finds herself trapped between his unyielding grip and the weight of their shared history. Seymour maintains his proximity, insisting that she apply the necessary antiseptic to his fresh injuries. She recalls Howard's cold, clinical disregard for Seymour's pain during the initial, unmedicated surgery. Stepping back to the medical cart, she prepares the supplies with the steady, practiced hands of an elite field operative. She leans down to address the lacerations on his lower leg, her focus entirely centered on the technical task of wound care. Seymour sits motionless, his torso a map of fresh bandages and scars that tell the story of their recent defeat at the docks. The sterile bandages flutter as she works, the heavy silence of the room amplifying the physical strain of the recovery process. He exhales sharply, the physical toll of his injuries becoming harder to mask under her close-range inspection. Ursula feels a surge of heat in her cheeks, interpreting his heavy breathing as a deliberate attempt to unsettle her focus. She applies the medicated swab to the wound with clinical precision, trying to ignore the awkward proximity of the situation. Her composure begins to fray as she suggests he finish the application himself to restore a professional distance. Seymour points toward a deeper puncture on his shoulder, demanding she complete the treatment she started. She carefully treats the trauma on his chest, her touch light but efficient as she navigates the delicate tissue. Ursula's internal alarms flare as the lack of space between them begins to feel like a calculated psychological trap. Sensing her control slipping, she abruptly turns back to the supply tray to gather more equipment. Seymour's eyes darken with a desperate resolve as he requests a much more intimate level of care to seal their tactical pact. Ursula stares at him in a state of pure shock, her professional mask finally shattering under the weight of his request. He reaches out and firmly catches her wrist, preventing her from retreating back into her cold, detached persona. She closes her eyes for a fleeting second, feeling a sense of profound exhaustion at the complex games they are forced to play. Outside the bay, Howard grows suspicious of the sudden silence, his silhouette looming through the frosted glass. The mole bursts into the room with an aggressive shout, demanding to know why the interrogation has suddenly stalled. Howard sneers at the scene, mockingly questioning if this display of affection is Ursula's idea of a high-pressure interrogation. His eyes narrow with a lethal glint as he warns her against breaking the professional promise she made to him. Ursula turns a startled gaze toward the intruder, her mind racing to re-establish the facade of her control over the prisoner. Seymour offers a smug, mocking smile, suggesting that their behavior is merely a natural part of a high-stakes reconciliation. Howard's face twists with a surge of genuine fury, his composure cracking as he realizes he may be losing his grip on his specimen. Seymour leans back with a mocking smirk, questioning Howard's constant presence as an unwanted observer in the room. The commander narrows his eyes, comparing the mole's persistent behavior to that of a haunting ghost. Howard's expression darkens as he notes that Seymour is only the second person daring enough to insult him so directly. A lethal glint flashes in the scientist's red eyes as he recalls the gruesome fate of the last individual who crossed him. Losing his composure, Howard draws his sidearm and aims it directly at the defenseless prisoner's head. Ursula moves with a blur of speed, delivering a high kick that sends the weapon spinning across the room. The operative settles back with a cold glare, demanding Howard cease his unprofessional harassment of a wounded asset. Howard stares at the floor in a calculated silence, questioning if Ursula has compromised her secret agreement with Alan Hugh. He draws a surgical scalpel, offering to personally terminate the commander if she lacks the resolve to finish the job. The mole lunges forward, the sterile blade gleaming as he attempts to breach Seymour's personal space. Howard roughly seizes the commander by his collar, the air thick with the tension of their mutual hostility. Seymour remains unfazed, taunting Howard with the idea that his death would only solidify his importance to Ursula. A dark, triumphant smile plays on the commander's lips as he asserts that he will remain an unforgettable figure in her life. Howard pivots toward Ursula, demanding a clear clarification of her professional assessment of their captive. His face is a mask of suppressed agitation, searching for any sign of emotional compromise in her stoic expression. Seymour adds to the pressure, demanding that Ursula finally declare where her true loyalties and interests lie. Ursula stands with her arms folded, her patience for their psychological posturing clearly reaching its limit. She turns her back on both men, asserting that no one has the authority to dictate her personal preferences or professional focus. Howard lets out a sharp, cynical laugh, relishing her blunt dismissal of all men as mere obstacles. The hyena's gaze becomes razor-sharp as she reminds the mole that his opinions were never requested. She closes the distance and grips Howard's face with a firm, warning hand, signaling the end of his interrogation antics. Ursula's voice drops to a lethal whisper as she threatens to physically ensure he listens to her orders more carefully. Despite the threat, Howard's grin remains twisted as he probes for more information on the criteria she looks for in a partner. Ursula lists her absolute distastes, targeting those who use physical displays or flirtatious behavior to distract from the mission. Seymour watches her intently, realizing that her supposed likes are actually a clever list of her professional grievances. She continues her fabricated description, painting a picture of an ideal companion who is subservient and non-resistant to her command. The commander processes her specific demands, his mind racing to analyze the strategic implications of her stated preferences. Howard absorbs the information with a look of intense, analytical focus, his suspicion replaced by a new, unsettling curiosity. The mole suddenly breaks away, claiming he has urgent experimental data to process before rushing out of the medical bay. Once they are alone, Ursula returns to Seymour's side, her professional concern returning to his physical stabilization. She notes that his wounds are reopening and orders him to rest, while she secures their extraction route. Seymour watches her departure with a heavy, unreadable gaze, the weight of their unspoken pact hanging in the air. Ursula moves toward the exit, her focus narrowing on the tactical necessity of keeping Seymour under her exclusive control. In a nearby washroom, Howard leans over a sink, the cold water failing to dampen his racing thoughts. He stares into the mirror, his reflection revealing a man consumed by the need to meet Ursula's impossible standards. The mole's expression softens for a fraction of a second as he contemplates the possibility of being her chosen associate. A determined look takes hold of Howard as he decides to adapt his persona to perfectly match her stated requirements. A man's face is contorted in a silent, desperate plea for salvation from his merciless captors. Jack Lane stares blankly ahead, the weight of his recent trauma etched into every line of his weathered face. He realizes with a jolt of terror that his mobility has been permanently stripped away by his enemies. Jokwon maintains a cold, professional distance as he reviews the mounting medical costs of the recovery operation. He presents a credit card with a chilling smile, demanding the financial credentials required to settle the account. The young operative bluntly reveals that the guild leader himself was the one who ordered the man's horrific injuries. The patient's eyes cloud with despair as the crushing reality of his total betrayal finally sinks in. He seethes with a newfound hatred, silently vowing to make his former associates pay for their cruelty. A recording of Alan Hugh's voice pierces the silence, confirming the ruthless hierarchy that governs the guild. Polished footsteps echo down the sterile hall as the search for the runaway rat intensifies. Howard Wright makes a grand, menacing entrance into the secluded hospital ward to claim his prize. The mole brandishes a heavy bat, his expression radiating a predatory sense of accomplishment as he corners his prey. He focuses his unsettling gaze on Jokwon, warning the young man against any further attempts at resistance. The city skyline remains indifferent to the high-stakes interrogation unfolding within the dark facility. Howard looms over the young operative in the shadows, asserting his absolute dominance over the immediate situation. He threatens Jokwon with a surgical blade, demanding immediate answers regarding the location of the square seal. Ursula bursts into the room, her silhouette standing as a sharp contrast against the sterile lighting of the corridor. Howard turns to acknowledge her arrival, his smile widening with a dark and unhinged satisfaction. The hyena's professional mask slips for a fraction of a second as she processes the scene of carnage before her. She stares at the blood-stained walls where Jack Lane's interrogation reached its lethal and final conclusion. Howard greets her with a blood-splattered face, clearly relishing the absolute chaos he has created. Ursula demands a tactical justification for the unnecessary termination of such a high-value potential informant. The mole dismisses the victim as a mere distraction from his primary, pathological focus on Ursula herself. She seizes Howard's collar, questioning if this reckless act was a direct order from Alan Hugh. Her voice drops to a chilling low as she threatens to end his interference in her mission permanently. Howard remains unmoved by the threat, his red eyes searching hers for any sign of genuine emotional concern. She scoffs at his lack of discipline, comparing his erratic behavior to that of a disobedient animal. A dark chuckle escapes the mole as he leans into the comparison with an unsettling level of enthusiasm. He challenges her to decide if she prefers a loyal, subservient subordinate or a savage enforcer. The two elite operatives remain locked in a tense psychological standoff amidst the wreckage of the ward. Howard reaches out to pin her in place, testing the absolute limits of her professional patience. Ursula warns him that his continued physical provocations will be met with immediate and decisive force. The puppet master offers one final, deranged smile, confident in his ability to manipulate her focus to his advantage. A shadowy figure looms in the darkness, a man whose greed far outweighs his family loyalty. A cold transaction is finalized as hands meet over a heavy briefcase, sealing a young man's fate. Stacks of high-denomination bills fill the case, representing the blood money paid for a nephew's life. The uncle scoffs in the shadows, revealing that his only interest was the profit gained from the betrayal. A set of sharp heels clicks against the cold floor, signaling the arrival of a high-ranking operative. A mysterious woman leans over the captive, her presence as chilling as the facility around them. She reveals the dark truth of their organization, her red eyes glowing with a predatory intensity. With a mockery of warmth, she welcomes the terrified boy to the depths of the Aish syndicate. Young Howard pleads for a chance to prove his worth, desperate to avoid becoming a harvestable asset. Haley Garcia watches the exchange with a skeptical gaze, unimpressed by the boy's frantic promises. Ursula intervenes, suggesting they give the new recruit a chance to demonstrate his tactical potential. A cold smirk plays on her lips as she prepares to test his resolve in a truly gruesome manner. Howard brandishes a scalpel over his sobbing uncle, the tables finally turned on his betrayer. The young man's expression hardens, the last remnants of his innocence vanishing in the sterile light. He ignores the desperate pleas for mercy, his focus narrowing down to the surgical task before him. With a steady, practiced grip, he prepares to make the first incision that will define his future. Years later, Howard strides through a high-tech laboratory, his transition into a cold-blooded scientist complete. He enters a restricted containment bay, the automatic doors sliding shut with a heavy thud. He stares down at the remains of his uncle, now nothing more than a biological specimen for his experiments. Howard leans toward Ursula in her containment cell, questioning how she has survived 10 days of total isolation. Ursula's chin remains high, her refusal to break under his psychological pressure clear in every line of her face. He watches her with an unsettling fascination, drawn to the fire that still burns in her eyes despite her captivity. She spits a curse at him, her hatred for the man he has become radiating through the dark room. Seizing a sudden opening, she lashes out with a powerful kick aimed directly at his vital points. Howard's profile remains calm as he effortlessly dodges the strike, his reflexes far beyond those of a normal man. He counters the assault with a swift grapple, the two of them spinning in a deadly dance of combat. Ursula manages to pin him against the floor, her movements a blur of desperate, high-stakes aggression. A dark grin spreads across Howard's face as he notes her impressive combat readiness even in a weakened state. Ursula holds her ground, her gaze burning with a fierce determination as she rejects his offer of a partnership. Howard leans in close, his red eyes gleaming with a manic intensity as he offers Ursula a permanent place by his side. Ursula remains unmoved by his psychological games, her expression hardening into a mask of professional coldness. She keeps her grip tight on the small blade, using the threat of force to demand the truth about his deal with Alan. Howard looms over her with a predatory smirk, promising to reveal everything if she pledges her absolute loyalty to him. A look of pure disgust crosses Ursula's face as she realizes the depth of his obsession. The high-resolution monitor captures their tense interaction, broadcasting the struggle to a hidden observer. Seymour watches the screen with a clutched fist, his face a map of mounting fury and concern for his partner. Howard reaches out toward her, his movements calculated to maintain a sense of overwhelming proximity. Ursula tilts her head and offers a chillingly calm smile, seemingly considering the terms of his deranged offer. The scientist's expression softens for a moment, convinced that he has finally broken her legendary resolve. With the speed of a striking viper, Ursula's hand shoots out to seize the collar of his lab coat. She executes a textbook takedown, slamming Howard onto the floor and pinning him under her weight. Looking down at her captive, she coldly questions if he truly believed she would sell her soul for mere information. Howard stares up at her in a state of genuine shock, his carefully constructed dominance shattered in seconds. Ursula wastes no time, reaching into his pocket to extract his encrypted mobile device. She holds the phone in front of his face, forcing the security system to verify his biometric data. A successful login chime echoes through the room as the device's facial recognition grants her total access. She begins a rapid tactical sweep of his files, her eyes scanning for any evidence of his recent communications. Howard tries to reclaim the device, but his weak struggle is easily countered by her superior combat skill. The call records reveal a constant stream of outgoing and incoming calls to the head of the Commerce Guild. Ursula's breath hitches as she realizes Howard has been in contact with a man who was officially declared dead. Watching from the shadows, Seymour stares at the screen in disbelief at the level of high-level corruption being revealed. Across the city, Alan Hugh waits in his private study, his attention snapped toward a buzzing notification. The message from Howard provides a precise breakdown of an upcoming multi-million-dollar harbor transaction. Alan's face twists into a triumphant sneer as he realizes he finally has the upper hand against his rivals. He reaches for his wide-brimmed hat, his mind already calculating the profit from his next ruthless move. The guild leader strides into the hallway, commanding his elite security detail to mobilize for the harbor raid. He stops briefly to address a skeptical subordinate, asserting that Howard's intelligence has always been flawless. With a final, authoritative gesture, he silences any further dissent and prepares to leave the facility. Alan walks toward his transport, relishing the thought of finally unifying the city's underworld under his iron fist. A lethal, amber light flashes in his eyes as he vows to witness the final destruction of those who crossed him. Under the cover of night, a clandestine trade agreement is finalized between two high-level operatives amidst the towering shipping containers. The air suddenly stills as the negotiators realize their secret meeting has been compromised by an unseen force. A tactical perimeter is established in seconds, leaving the men staring down the barrels of multiple firearms as the order to surrender is issued. Alan Hugh steps into the light with a confident adjustment of his hat, offering the operatives a chance to switch their professional allegiances. The men recoil in defiance, questioning if he truly expects them to abandon their mission and betray their leadership. Alan dismisses their loyalty with a wave of his hand, mocking the crumbling state of the organizations they serve as he urges them to find a new way out. A cold, calculating gaze narrows as the true architect of the counter-ambush prepares to reveal their presence. Seymour and Ursula emerge from the shadows with weapons drawn, immediately shifting the balance of power in the harbor. Alan's composure shatters instantly as he realizes the targets he thought were safely detained in Howard's basement have escaped. Ursula acknowledges his shock with a dismissive wave, signaling that her team has already secured the entire area. 3 lethal laser sights converge on the guild leader's forehead, marking him as the primary target of the tactical operation. She leans forward with a chilling smile, mockingly questioning if Alan's head would burst like a sandbag under the pressure of her team's focus. The guild leader falls silent, the weight of his tactical failure finally beginning to register as he stares into the abyss. Ursula strides through the ranks of the disarmed security detail, her presence commanding absolute professional respect. Desperate to regain control, Alan attempts to manipulate her by bringing up their shared history and his role in her upbringing. He shifts his gaze toward Howard, searching for any remaining shred of loyalty, while questioning if Ursula intends to eliminate everyone who trusts her. Howard remains perfectly composed at Ursula's side, his commitment to the new objective clear despite Alan's psychological probing. Realizing his influence has evaporated, Alan bellows a frantic order for his remaining men to eliminate the ruthless hyena. Ursula remains unfazed, mockingly asking if his constant blinking is a sign of psychological distress or a tactical signal to his team. Alan forces a nervous laugh, claiming a mere irritation in his eye, while desperately hoping for an opening. Ursula reveals the trap's full scope, explaining how Howard has been feeding him calculated misinformation for weeks to lure him into this position. The revelation sends Alan into a state of uncontrolled fury as he realizes he has been the one being played all along. He spins around to face Howard, demanding to know why the stray dog he saved would dare to turn against his benefactor. Alan rages at the betrayal, unable to comprehend why Howard would prioritize a professional partnership with Ursula over guild loyalty. Howard offers a cold, satisfied smile, stating that his primary goal has always been the complete removal of the guild leader from the board. Shaking with indignation, Alan asserts his authority as the head of the Grand Chamber of Commerce, refusing to accept that he was fooled. The laser sights remain fixed on his brow, a constant reminder of the lethal stakes of his next desperate move. Driven to a final act of malice, Alan draws a concealed blade from his cane and lunges forward, determined to take Ursula down with him. Seymour's voice rings out in a sharp warning as he shouts for Ursula to dodge the sudden physical assault. Howard reacts with explosive speed, stepping forward to shield Ursula and intercepting the incoming strike. The scientist braces for the impact, his focus entirely on neutralizing the immediate threat to his partner. Before the blade can connect, Howard draws his sidearm with clinical precision, leveling it at his former employer's chest. Ursula readies her own weapon with a professional click, ensuring the situation remains under her absolute control. She presses the barrel against Alan's temple, questioning the logic of why anyone would be intimidated by a man armed only with a knife. Seymour watches the interaction with intense professional concern, his expression reflecting the high-stakes pressure of the mission. The two men stand together in the aftermath of the struggle, the tension of the raid finally beginning to dissipate as they confirm the target's status. Alan offers one final, defiant boast about his smuggling roots and loyalty, but his words are cut short by a single, decisive muzzle flash. A single, stray drop of blood splatters against the cold concrete as the immediate threat is neutralized. Ursula towers over the defeated Alan Hugh, her silhouette sharp against the night sky as he kneels in total submission. She levels her firearm with clinical precision, firing a warning shot that signals the end of his resistance. Alan's face is a mask of disbelief and agony, blood trickling from his mouth as his empire crumbles around him. Turning her attention away from the fallen leader, Ursula calls out to her team, demanding their immediate presence. Both Howard and Seymour step forward, their faces reflecting a competitive drive to prove their worth to the mission leader. A brief moment of friction erupts between the two operatives as they bicker over which of them was actually being summoned. Ursula gestures toward the discarded cane sword on the ground, issuing a cold directive to Howard. Howard retrieves the weapon with a grim sense of purpose, awaiting the final phase of the tactical interrogation. She orders him to strike, demanding that Alan finally acknowledge his crimes and offer a formal apology for his betrayal. Without a moment's hesitation, Howard raises the blade high, his frame casting a long, intimidating shadow over the prisoner. A dark intensity flickers in Howard's eyes as he prepares to carry out the sentence with surgical detachment. The silence of the harbor is shattered by Alan's cries as Howard begins the methodical process of breaking the guild leader's spirit. Seymour approaches Ursula's side, his tactical assessment of the situation clearly weighing heavily on his mind. He remains silent and aloof, his disapproval of the current methods visible in the tightening of his jaw. Ursula explains that she spared Seymour from the grim task to keep his professional record clean, noting Howard's experience with such operations. Howard continues the assault with relentless efficiency, the blade becoming a tool of absolute psychological and physical pressure. A subtle shift occurs in Seymour's expression, perhaps acknowledging the logic behind Ursula's protective tactical decision. Howard's focus remains locked on his target, his gaze cold and unyielding as he demands the required admission of guilt. The interrogation is abruptly interrupted by a commanding voice, echoing through the shipping containers, ordering an immediate halt. A man in a wheelchair emerges from the shadows, revealed to be the very benefactor Seymour believed had perished long ago. Shock ripples through the team as Seymour and Howard stare in disbelief at the man who was officially declared dead. Ursula turns to face the new arrival, her composure remaining unbroken by the sudden reappearance of this key figure. She offers a knowing smile, revealing that his arrival was a calculated expectation in her overarching strategy. Seymour and Ursula exchange a brief, loaded glance, acknowledging the massive shift in the mission's scope. The uncle maintains a calm, authoritative presence as he formally greets the group after his long period of concealment. Fury flares in Seymour's eyes as he demands to know why his own family would hide such a critical secret for so long. Later, Howard sits in isolation, his frustration evident as he processes the complex web of betrayals. Ursula and Seymour confront him directly, demanding answers regarding his relationship with the supposedly deceased benefactor. Howard responds with a taunting smirk, refusing to divulge the full truth until the tactical conditions are met. Ursula narrows her eyes, her analytical mind searching for any weakness in Howard's professional facade. She maintains a firm professional posture as she questions Howard, pointing out his deliberate choice to spare them in the basement. She focuses her analytical gaze on him, highlighting their shared tactical objective against a common foe. Extending a hand in a formal gesture, Ursula offers a strategic partnership to ensure their mutual success. Howard looks down at the offered alliance, a genuine, calculated smile spreading across his face. The two operatives finalize the agreement with a firm, professional handshake, sealing their new allegiance. Howard confirms the pact, asserting that their professional interests have always been fundamentally intertwined. Flashbacks reveal Alan Hugh reviewing tactical intelligence, completely unaware that his most trusted source was compromised. A digital log confirms Howard's role as a double agent, revealing the depth of the deception that led to the guild leader's downfall. Seymour stares at his uncle, the weight of the deception finally sinking in as he asks if the truth would have ever come out without Ursula's intervention. His voice trembles with suppressed rage, pointing out that Ursula was forced to live with the crushing guilt of being his supposed assassin. Ursula freezes, the word assassin echoing in her mind as her fragmented memories begin to clash with this new reality. The benefactor offers a calm smile, admitting he orchestrated the disappearance to pass his power to the next generation while he still had time. He explains that Alan's unchecked ambition made a fake death necessary to stir the pot and give his successors a fighting chance. A jagged memory resurfaces of the benefactor mocking his old friend, his hand clasped over the dying man's in a final, cold farewell. Alan's face from the past is a mask of shock and agony, blood staining his collar as the betrayal becomes clear. Ursula stands tall, demanding clarification on how she could be labeled an assassin when her memory is a blurred haze. A rush of long-lost images floods her mind, from her innocent childhood years to the moment she first gripped a weapon for tactical training. She recalls the cold floor of a dark room, a shadowy figure looming over her with a firearm just before everything went black. Reality hits her like a physical blow. She had viewed this man as her savior, yet he used her very life as a pawn in his grand game. Her eyes sharpen with a sudden, piercing clarity as the final piece of the puzzle locks into place. In the vision of the past, she remembers waving goodbye to the uncle, promising to return with the documents the very next day. But 10 minutes later, Seymour burst into that same room, calling out for his uncle in a state of panic. He found only a gruesome scene. The benefactor slumped in his chair, his shirt soaked in a deep crimson. Back on that fateful night, a projectile whistled past Ursula's ear, narrowly missing its mark as the hunt began. She dropped to her knees on the wet asphalt, screaming her innocence to the sky while the world turned against her. Seymour emerged from the shadows with a tactical squad, his weapon leveled at her as he cited the timing of her departure as proof of guilt. Ursula's heart shattered, realizing her closest ally already convicted her in his mind. Seymour's gaze was like ice as he declared that while his principles remained firm, she was the one who had changed. Ursula's reflexes took over, her body diving clear as the bullet chewed into the concrete where she had stood moments before. She scrambled away, her voice raw as she called out Seymour's full name in a mixture of fear and defiance. A getaway vehicle screeched to a halt, a frantic subordinate urging her to jump in before the perimeter closed. Seymour held his men back with a firm arm, his internal conflict visible even as he maintained his command. With a look of profound sorrow, he ordered his team to stand down and let her vanish into the night. Suddenly, a stray tactical device was launched from the back of the line, trailing smoke as it arched toward the fleeing car. A violent explosion rocked the street, engulfing the vehicle in a roar of orange flame and twisted metal. Seymour's eyes went wide with horror, the light of the blast reflecting the sudden loss of the woman he once trusted. One of his operatives stepped forward with a hollow apology, claiming the trigger had slipped during the chaos. A fleeting, innocent memory of a simpler time briefly flickers through her mind, a moment of pure, unburdened childhood joy. Returning to the present, Ursula stands in the center of the harbor, flanked by the two men who shaped her past. A confident smile plays on her lips as she declares that her amnesia is finally, truly broken. She looks away, contemplating the debt she owes to the man who raised her, despite the lies. Her fist clenches at her side, deciding that his role as her benefactor still holds weight in her personal code of honor. Alan Hugh groans in the dirt, the physical pain of his defeat paling in comparison to the collapse of his influence. Ursula's gaze turns lithely cold as she focuses on the man who truly caused her years of suffering. She looms over Alan with her firearm raised, dismissing his status as nothing more than a stain on the city's history. The benefactor reaches out, warning her that killing a man of Alan's stature could plunge the entire guild into chaos. The old man watches her, realizing that the girl he once knew has evolved into a force far beyond his control. Without a second glance, she turns her back on the wreckage of her past and begins to walk away. Seymour and the benefactor are left in a heavy, echoing silence, watching the hyena disappear into the shadows of the harbor. Tactical units burst through the doors, commanding everyone to drop their weapons and surrender immediately. Outside the estate, workers begin the physical dismantling of the Hugh family legacy by removing the residence's main identification sign. A new era begins as the Grand Chamber of Commerce plaque, is hoisted into place, while the former occupants are escorted away. From behind the safety of his office blinds, the benefactor observes the total restructuring of the city's hierarchy. He turns to Seymour, calmly questioning if the younger man finally understands the strategic necessity of his fake demise. Seymour's composure cracks, his face twisting with rage as he realizes how deeply Ursula was used as a tactical pawn. The benefactor remains unmoved by the outburst, preparing to explain the cold logic behind his manipulative maneuvers. Seymour demands a clear explanation, unable to fathom why his own family would orchestrate such a devastating betrayal. The old man argues that the extreme pressure was a deliberate trial designed to forge Ursula into an apex leader. A look of grim realization washes over Seymour as he calculates the true cost of his uncle's long-term vision. The benefactor notes that while most men are blinded by the pursuit of power, his goals were strictly focused on succession. He reaches out to finalize their understanding, requesting that Seymour eventually transfer all operational authority to Ursula. Seymour stands completely paralyzed by the weight of the request, his mind racing through the implications for his future. A flicker of deep internal conflict crosses his features as he struggles to reconcile his duty with his personal feelings. He firmly asserts that his motivations were never about personal gain, but about ensuring her safety and success. Later that evening, Ursula stands alone in the shadows, reflecting on the complex web of lies that defined her past. She recalls a poignant letter from her youth, a reminder of the innocent bonds formed before the world of shadows took over. Finding a moment of respite at a local lounge, she enjoys a quiet beverage while processing her newfound independence. Nearby, Joaquin and his partner celebrate the mission's success with an enthusiastic display of professional camaraderie. Ursula casts a sharp, disapproving glance toward the pair, her focus remaining strictly on her own tactical reflections. The operative offers a playful smirk, suggesting that Ursula's stoic isolation could use a bit of social distraction. With a theatrical clap of her hands, she announces that she has arranged for a high-end performance specialist to join them. The sound of a heavy, polished boot hitting the floor signals the arrival of the unexpected guest. The newcomer enters with a crisp, professional presentation, his attire suggesting a formal role for the evening's events. Seymour reveals himself as the surprise guest, standing tall as he adopts a specialized persona to re-establish contact. Ursula's eyes widen in genuine shock as she recognizes her former commander in such an unorthodox setting. The rest of the team quickly vacates the area, leaving the two elite operatives to navigate their new professional dynamics. Seymour leans into the space, his presence intense as he prepares to prove his loyalty through this specialized assignment. He maintains a completely serious expression, informing her that he is ready to follow any directive she cares to issue. Ursula rests her chin on her hand, eyeing him with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity regarding his sudden humility. She decides to test his commitment by mockingly suggesting he perform a difficult physical routine for her amusement. Seymour meets her gaze with unwavering determination, signaling his absolute willingness to fulfill the request. He continues the professional role play by expertly presenting a refreshment on a tray with clinical precision. Ursula accepts the gesture with a sharp look, acknowledging the high-stakes game of professional social maneuvering they are now playing. Ursula leans in, her voice low as she confirms the full restoration of her tactical memories. Her analytical gaze searches his face for even the slightest hint of deception. She pins him against the upholstery, questioning if he truly believes he can walk back into her life after everything he's done. Ursula dismisses his offer to take a physical hit, noting that striking him would be a waste of her technical focus. She reflects on the complex web of lies spun by Seymour's uncle, struggling to discern which parts of their history were authentic. A memory of the benefactor surfaces, highlighting his cold-blooded plans for the guild's eventual succession. Ursula recalls the moment she first suspected her entire life was being engineered for a singular, tactical purpose. She remembers the isolation of her past, walking away from those who viewed her as a mere asset. Turning back to Seymour, she demands to know if his current loyalty is just another elaborate honey trap for his own gain. Seymour's expression remains steady, his focus entirely on the resolution of their current professional conflict. Ursula issues a final ultimatum, declaring that if he doesn't speak now, their partnership ends permanently. Seymour lunges forward to intercept her departure, refusing to let the mission or their connection dissolve. He pulls her close, dropping his professional guard to assert his absolute commitment to her. His voice drops to a whisper as he admits his focus has been locked on her since their earliest training days. Ursula's eyes widen in genuine surprise at the raw intensity of his admission. A fleeting memory of their childhood reveals a young Seymour vowing to prove his worth once he reached her level. She remains silent for a moment, processing the weight of a devotion that spans decades. Ursula tests his resolve by mentioning Howard's tactical advantages, watching for any crack in his composure. Seymour reacts with immediate, decisive action, his focus shifting toward a massive strategic sacrifice. He pulls out his device and issues a global directive, formally stepping down and transferring all operational authority to Ursula. With his official resignation public, he leads her toward the exit, declaring that his entire legacy now belongs to her. The two operatives stride through the lounge together, their silhouettes framed by the light of a new era. Ursula attempts to maintain a professional distance, worried that their visible closeness will damage their public standing. Seymour dismisses the concern, prioritizing his loyalty to her over the opinions of the city's elite. He brings her into a firm embrace, signaling the end of their long-standing tactical rivalry. Without warning, he lifts her off her feet, physically demonstrating his commitment to their new alliance. Ursula protests the sudden move, her professional facade momentarily cracking as she demands to be set down. She pushes against his chest, her touch conveying a mixture of frustration and a softening of her defensive stance. A rare look of quiet acceptance washes over her as she realizes the depth of his sincerity. She offers a compromise, promising to cooperate if he returns her to a more formal posture. Seymour's gaze is filled with hope as he asks for final confirmation of their new relationship. Ursula leans in, her presence commanding as she officially designates him as her chosen partner. They seal their professional and personal pact with a moment of absolute closeness. Seymour looks at her with unyielding intensity, vowing that she will never have to face the shadows alone again. A lighter flickers to life, signaling the start of a somber ceremony for a fallen titan. A portrait of the benefactor stands as a silent reminder of the machinations that forged the current leaders. Under a gray sky, Ursula and Seymour stand united at the funeral, ready to inherit the empire left behind. Seymour remains a constant presence at her side, offering support as they navigate the crowd of mourning elites. Ursula's expression is one of cold resolve, her mourning mask hiding the gears of her next strategic move. A gold band on her finger confirms that their alliance is now a permanent fixture of the city's hierarchy. The solemn silence is shattered as a heavy boot kicks open the doors of the memorial hall. A group of armed thugs from a rival gang bursts in, demanding Seymour's immediate presence. Seymour turns with a look of icy indifference, viewing the intruders as nothing more than a minor logistical nuisance. The leader of the gang levels a weapon, threatening to dismantle everything the pair has built. Ursula steps forward with lightning speed, physically asserting her dominance over the situation. She stands shoulder to shoulder with Seymour, warning the intruders that they are facing a united front. The two share a brief, confident smirk, fully aware of their overwhelming tactical advantage. The thugs hesitate, noticing the matching rings that signify a power dynamic they weren't prepared for. Before they can react, Ursula draws her firearm and fires a precise, warning shot. The bullet finds its mark with clinical accuracy, forcing the lead aggressor to drop his weapon in shock. Smoke curls from the barrel as Ursula stands tall, the undisputed authority in the room. She orders her security detail to remove the trash, demanding a full accounting for the disruption. Turning toward the gathered elites, Ursula makes a formal announcement regarding the new leadership of the Grand Chamber. She officially introduces Seymour as her future husband and partner in the city's governance. Seymour stands momentarily stunned by her public declaration, his usual composure failing him. He quickly recovers, lifting her once again to escort her away for a private debriefing. Back in their private quarters, Seymour prepares to discuss the next phase of their long-term expansion. The heavy doors close, sealing the fate of the city under the rule of its most lethal pair.